Chapter 1594. Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh bitterly when he sensed the vitality within his body flowing away swiftly. I've gone too far. I've overestimated my sword physique. Of course, it's also because my sword physique has practically never failed. Actually, I was being impulsive just now. What level of expert is my father at? If I can even absorb my father's sword energy, then my sword physique is truly invincible. I'm done for. Suddenly, the sword energy within Yi Xian's body started trembling, and it didn't take long for the blood within him to start boiling. The undying bloodline. Yi Xian suddenly sat up. The seal has been broken? Meanwhile, a Xiao Ta suddenly floated out from within him, and then Xiao Ta's excited voice resounded. F***CK. 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 I'm finally out. Ah! Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta was clearly very excited, and he jumped about. Meanwhile, Yi Xian hurriedly said, Xiao Ta, quickly give me some violet energy. Because he noticed that relying solely on the undying bloodline wasn't enough to recover at all. Xiao Ta hurriedly stopped. He floated over to Yi Xian, and then countless strands of violet energy surged out from within him. Yi Xian instantly felt much better after he absorbed the violet energy. Meanwhile, Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, did you commit suicide to let me out? Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. Yes. Xiao Ta was slightly moved, Young master, you're really loyal. Yi Xian was speechless. Moments later, his body returned to normal. When his body returned to normal, his cultivation was once again sealed. Yi Xian was speechless when he witnessed this scene. He's basically refusing to allow me to utilize swordsman's abilities no matter what. I can only use my body. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiao Ta, quickly give me Miss Area's blood. He decided to improve his physical body. A long time ago, his physical body was his strongest trump card. But now, his physical body couldn't keep up with his realm and sword Dao cultivation. He had to improve it. A white jade bottle suddenly floated out from Xiao Ta's body. Yi Xian took the white jade bottle and opened it. Just as he was about to drink it, he seemed to have thought of something and stopped. His body was now at the god realm. Wouldn't it be a waste for his god realm body to drink this blood? Yi Xian thought about it and put the bottle away. Area's blood was definitely the most powerful beast's blood. He should at least wait until he reached the eternal realm before taking it. It was too wasteful to take it now. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta, can you ask Xiaoniu or Qiong Qi to give me some beast blood? Xiao Ta thought about it and said, sure. A moment later, 2 white jade bottles appeared in front of Yi Xian. Xiao Ta said, this is Xiaoniu and Qiong Qi's. Yi Xian nodded. He opened the white jade bottle and drank it. Boom! As the beast blood entered his body, Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled. This time, Yi Xian didn't use the Taoist body cultivation method. Instead, he used the ancient warrior body cultivation method because he found that this cultivation method was more powerful. After he operated the ancient warrior body cultivation method, a golden airflow suddenly appeared around him. The golden airflow entered his body and then spread out from his body, constantly circulating. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiao Ta, I want more blood. I want more. A moment later, 2 white jade bottles appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian directly opened the white jade bottle and drank it. Gradually, the golden airflow around Yi Xian increased. Another 2 hours passed. Yi Xian suddenly said anxiously, Xiao Ta, I want more blood. A moment later, a large basin suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The basin was full of blood. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta said, Brother Qiong Qi said you should drink enough. Yi Xian did not hesitate. He directly picked up the basin and started drinking. As the beast blood entered his body, the golden airflow around Yi Xian increased. Moreover, it was still transforming. The color was changing. There was a trace of red in the golden. And Yi Xian's aura was also getting stronger. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. As soon as he stood up, the golden airflow around him suddenly rushed back into his body. Boom! A powerful aura swept out from his body. In an instant, the space within tens of thousands of miles rippled like water. Physical strength. Eternal realm. After drinking countless beast blood, his physical body broke through again and reached the eternal realm. It was not easy. Because breaking through to the eternal realm this time was more than several times more difficult than breaking through to the god realm. The further he went, the harder it was to improve his physical body. Very, very difficult. Now, if he wanted to break through to the divine way realm, Xiaonyo's blood was completely useless. Xiongqi's blood was still useful, but it was not very useful. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian took out Arya's blood. He still did not want to use it. Because he knew that if he used it after he reached the divine way realm, Arya's blood was very likely to let him directly reach the heavenly way realm. It was still a bit wasteful to use it now. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian asked, "Xiao Ta, do you still have Arya's blood?" Xiao Ta said, "No. No." Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. Unfortunately, the Arya he saw before was not in her original body. If it was her original body, he could ask for some blood. After a while, Yi Xian put away the bottle of blood. He still decided not to use Arya's blood. He wanted to use Arya's blood after he reached the eternal realm. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly split open. The next moment, 12 experts in black robes appeared in front of him. 12 devil envoys. The 12 of them did not waste any time and directly rushed towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not hesitate and directly rushed out. His physical body had just broken through, and he wanted to have a good fight. As long as it was not a mortal realm expert, he was not afraid at all. If he encountered a mortal realm expert, he could still fight one, but if it was someone like Mu Xiaodao, then it would be a pain in the ass. Fortunately, the 12 people in front of him were not in the mortal realm, but only the peak of the heavenly way realm. Yi Xian did not care who they were. In any case, they did not come with good intentions, so he just had to fight. Very soon, a series of explosions resounded in the field. In an unknown mountain range, a woman was walking slowly. This woman was Tu. After walking for an unknown period of time, Tu suddenly stopped. There was a small cave in front of her. As she gazed at the cave in front of her, tears suddenly flowed down from her eyes. This was the place where Big Brother had died. Even though Tianming had been divided into 4 at the beginning, and all 4 of them had independent thoughts, their feelings for Big Brother were still there. Amongst them, Tianming's obsession was the deepest, and it was to the point that she didn't hesitate to annihilate all living beings in order to break through herself and save Big Brother by force. This was the reason why she hadn't stopped Tianming at that time. Because in her heart, she hoped that Tianming would succeed as well. The 4 of them did not owe anything to the living beings in the world. Tu stood before the cave for 3 days and 3 nights, and the happy times of her childhood flashed through her mind. At dawn on the 4th day, a ray of sunlight descended onto the ground. Tu suddenly chuckled and said, "From today onward, I won't practice the fist technique anymore. I won't drink wine as well." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. A sword seal with every step, a sword Dao with every seal. At this moment, Tu, who was once one of Tianming's disciples, had finally let go of the obsession in her heart. Because that little boy had grown up. He was alive. In the past, when Big Brother wasn't here, everything was meaningless to her. Including the sword Dao. Therefore, she hadn't practiced the sword for hundreds of thousands of years. What was the point of practicing the sword? Meaningless. Because no matter how strong the sword was, there was no one to protect. Therefore, even when she attacked, she only used her fists. But now, it was different. Big Brother was still alive. Everything was different now. Including the sword Dao. In the distance, Tu's aura was getting stronger and stronger. At this moment, her aura had already surpassed ordinary swords. However, the sword Dao aura was still getting stronger. When the existence of the sword had meaning, everything would be different. Outside the mountain range, Tu raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. Her eyes were cold. Cosmos God Court, I'm coming. As soon as she finished speaking, a ray of sword light shot into the sky and headed towards the depths of the starry sky. In the fifth dimension. In the starry sky, a woman looked down with a calm expression. She didn't seem to be thinking about anything. This person was Mu Niannian. As a fifth dimension Tendo, when she returned to the fifth dimension, she felt extremely close. Extremely, extremely close. This was because she had grown up here, so she was incomparably familiar with everything here. And at this moment, the fifth dimension no longer had any fifth-dimensional tribulations. In the current fifth dimension, everything was in order. No experts dared to destroy the heaven and earth spiritual chi. In this place, destroying the heaven and earth spiritual chi was a serious crime. The fifth dimension was getting better and better. And this place no longer needed her to protect. Because here, everything was fine. Nian Nian looked at the five-dimensional universe for an entire day and night. On the second day, Nian Nian suddenly stood up and smiled, I have to live for myself now. After saying this, she turned and left. The moment she took her first step, she broke through ordinary swords and reached above ordinary swords. Buzz! A sword cry suddenly resounded from the depths of the starry sky. In an instant, the entire fifth dimension was filled with countless sword cries. This was a response, and also a sign of submission. And after Nian Nian reached above ordinary swords, her sword Dao aura was still rising crazily. At the same time, in the fifth dimension, a mysterious force suddenly shot into the sky and went straight into the depths of the starry sky. Then, it surged towards Nian Nian. A gift from the fifth dimension. In the starry sky, Nian Nian slowly walked towards the depths of the starry sky. The smile on her face was very relaxed, unprecedentedly relaxed. She had protected the fifth dimension for countless years. She had lived for the fifth dimension all her life, and she had even almost sacrificed her life for the fifth dimension. But she did not regret it. And now, she had let go of the fifth dimension. She wanted to live for herself. Let go of her obsession. At this moment, Mu Niannian suddenly stopped. She raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. The corners of her mouth curled up. The fourth sword in the human world? No. I want to be the fourth strongest in the human world. Cosmos God Court, here I come. After saying this, she suddenly disappeared. And at the end of the distant starry sky, the space suddenly exploded, and a ray of sword light entered. P.S. Asking for votes. 1 vote per person, I will be the fifth. Chapter 1595. After the thought disappeared, the fifth dimension regained its calm. At this moment, a woman appeared. Empress Zhuang Weiran. Zhuang Weiran looked at the distant starry sky with a trace of worry in her eyes. Undying Emperor Clan. Within the Undying Palace, Dongli Jing sat quietly. Not far from her were Dongli Zhan and Nanxing. Dongli Jing looked at the secret scroll in her hand. After a while, she put it down. Are you sure? Nanxing nodded, yes. Dongli Jing closed her eyes slowly. The secret scroll contained some information about the Cosmos God Court. There were many experts above the mortal realm in the Cosmos God Court. After a while, Dongli Jing said softly, "The gap between us and the Cosmos God Court is not small." Nanqing nodded, "Indeed. Fortunately, the Cosmos God Court has opponents too. One of them is the Nether Hall and Heaven's Sanctum. I have already sent people to contact them." Dongli Jing shook her head. "The alliance is needed, but we also need to increase our strength. Our own strength is the way to go." As she spoke, she looked at Dongli Zhan. "The Ancestral Hall is open to the public. Any clansman who is confident in themselves can enter to cultivate." Dongli Zhan nodded, "Sure." Dongli Jing added, "Focus on the youngsters with the undying bloodline." Dongli Zhan smiled, "There is one thing, those youngsters are interested in the position of young master." Dongli Jing said, "I know, they want to fight for the position. Tell them that the family won't stop them from fighting for it. When the young lord returns, they can all challenge him. As long as they defeat the young lord, they will be the next young lord." Dongli Zhan smiled, "You are very confident in him." Higashi Yasushi nodded. "I've noticed a problem. This kid's opponents are all abnormal. His opponents are several levels higher than him. If you put him in the same level, you'll realize that there aren't many who are more outstanding than him. He is always fighting several levels higher than him." Nanqing nodded, "With the young master's current strength, no one in the younger generation of the Undying Emperor clan is his match. Of course, I don't know if he will improve in the demon region." Dongli Jing asked, "Can you contact him?" Nanqing shook his head. "We haven't built a star field teleportation array, so we can't go to the demon area. Thus, we can't contact him." Higashi Yasushi asked, "What about the Cosmos God Court?" Nanqing said solemnly, "The Cosmos God Court should have gone to find him. Those Master Yen of the Cosmos God Court had built a star domain teleportation array before. They can head to the Devil region anytime they want." Higashi Yasushi furrowed his brows. "If that's the case, then he's not in a particularly good situation right now." Nanqing nodded. Higashi Yasushi remained silent. Nanqing said, "We can't help him for now. What we can do now is to increase the strength of our people as soon as possible." The two women continued forward. When they approached the village, a middle-aged man appeared before them. The middle-aged man gazed coldly at the two women and didn't speak. At this moment, a voice sounded out from within the village. "Let them in." Hearing this, the middle-aged man turned around and bowed respectfully before retreating to the side. The two women continued forward. After entering the village, Anlancio glanced at the surroundings. There were some villagers here, and their auras were extremely strong. Right at this moment, Miss Ding stopped. Not too far away from them sat a woman, and there was a large blade by the woman's side. Miss Ding bowed slightly, "Ancestor." "Ancestor." Anlancio was stunned. The woman looked at Miss Ding and smiled, "You're calling me ancestor?" Miss Ding nodded, "I'm his woman, so I naturally should call you ancestor." The woman laughed, "Indeed. Is there something you need from me?" The woman nodded, "He has a son." The woman frowned, "From the Yang clan?" The woman nodded, "An authentic mad demon blood demon." The woman looked at Miss Ding, "State your purpose." Miss Ding said, "He's being targeted by the Cosmos God Court, and his situation isn't good." The woman shook her head, "With his father around, the Cosmos God Court can't do anything to him." Miss Ding said, "Universe laws." Hearing this, the woman frowned, "Universe laws? How did he offend the universe laws?" Miss Ding said, "He has a calamity body." As she spoke, she told the woman about the matter between Yi Xian and the Cosmos God Court. Moments later, the woman squinted her eyes, and a cold light flickered in her eyes. "He's also Tian Ming's brother?" Miss Ding nodded. The woman smiled. You should know the grudge between me and Tian Ming. Miss Ding nodded again. The woman looked at Miss Ding. Then why are you telling me this? Miss Ding looked straight at the woman. He's the son of the Yang clan, and your blood is the same. As for Tian Ming, this is a matter between our clan, and has nothing to do with Tian Ming. What do you think? The woman looked at Miss Ding for a long time before smiling. You really know how to talk. Miss Ding bowed slightly. Ancestor, the Yang clan has already split. Whether we can unite or not will depend on this. Even though it's not easy to talk to his father, that little fellow is easy to talk to. If he's willing to acknowledge his ancestors, does it matter if his father doesn't? As she spoke, she turned and left with Enlancio. On the spot. This chapter has yet to end. Please flip the page. The woman remained silent. The Yang clan split. Actually, the green-robed man did not acknowledge his ancestors. He only acknowledged Yang Wudi, but did not acknowledge the Yang clan. Because of this, even though the green-robed man defied the heavens and changed his bloodline, the Yang clan did not receive any benefits. Because he did not acknowledge it. Because of this, the Yang clan's bloodline did not advance. Because the green-robed man never acknowledged himself as a Yang clan member, he only acknowledged that he was Yang Wudi's son. It could be said that the Yang clan now had two branches. One was her branch, and the other was the green-robed man's branch. Acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan. The woman slowly closed her eyes. Actually, she did not really want to return to the Yang clan back then. Because she had been imprisoned by Tian Ming for so many years, the Yang clan was already very unfamiliar to her. But there was no way. Apart from the green-robed man, the rest of the Yang clan's descendants were really too miserable. They were almost exterminated. And the green-robed man did not acknowledge himself as a Yang clan member. She had no choice but to care. Because if she did not care, the Yang clan would really be gone. Actually, she also hoped that the green-robed man could acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan. But she knew that this was very difficult. That man's temper was not ordinary. Want him to acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan? Unless Yang Wudi was resurrected. Otherwise, there was no chance. At this time, a middle-aged man walked to the woman's side and bowed slightly. Ancestor. The woman said, Speak. The middle-aged man said, That lady is right. It is not easy to talk to a father. We can start with the son. If that little fellow is willing to acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan, I am willing to immediately give up the position of patriarch. The woman was silent for a long time. Then she smiled and said, Fine. Then we will start with the son. As she spoke, she picked up the large saber beside her. I will go meet this cosmos god court. After saying that, she directly disappeared into the horizon. On the other side, in the starry sky, Miss Ding and Enlancio were flying. Enlancio asked, Aunt Ding, where are we going now? Miss Ding looked into the distance and said softly, We are looking for a heavyweight. Enlancio was a little curious, who? Miss Ding's lips curled up, a fellow that even his father is afraid of. His father is only afraid of two people in his life. One is Sister Qingshi, and the other. As she said this, she did not speak further. Devil Domain. Yi Xian was still fighting with the 12 devil envoys. The battle was growing more and more intense. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly blasted a devil envoy flying with a punch, and that devil envoy was sent flying 3 kilometers away. The other devils looked at Yi Xian with slight fear. At this moment, they noticed that this human's physical body was extraordinarily abnormal. Moreover, he grew stronger as he fought. After he blasted that devil envoy flying with a punch, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he felt that his body was filled with strength. Boundless and boundless strength. Yi Xian suddenly roared with laughter. He raised his head and looked towards the depths of the starry sky, and his eyes were filled with battle intent. The invincible me has returned. His voice rumbled like thunder, and it shook the sky. Right at this moment, an enormous blood-colored cloud suddenly appeared in the starry sky, and then a blood-colored bolt of lightning shot down from the sky. Below, a wisp of ferocity flashed through Yi Xian's eyes. Do you think I will fucking run? No. Misfortune laws. Today, I will fucking tell you who the real daddy is. As he spoke, he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground and shot into the sky, and then he blasted his fist towards the blood-colored bolt of lightning. Bang! The sky suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, a figure crashed down from the sky and smashed heavily into the ground. It was Yi Xian. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian, who was covered in blood, crawled up from the deep hole in the ground, and then he ran without looking back. Moreover, he ran but naked. End of this chapter. Chapter 1596. Yi Xian ran very quickly. After all, his physical body was much stronger than before. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression was somewhat ugly. This time, his acting had failed. He still couldn't beat this calamity. Just now, his physical body had directly split open. It was too terrifying. According to his estimations, not to mention his current physical body, even a divine Valiant Realm physical body wouldn't be able to withstand this lightning. At this moment, a bolt of divine lightning suddenly struck down from above his head. Yi Xian's expression changed and he hurriedly leaped away. Bang! Just as he left, a blood lightning landed and the ground turned into a huge abyss, so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. Yi Xian jumped in fright and immediately sped up, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. However, that calamity didn't disappear and was still following him. Moreover, the number of blood-red threads around his body was increasing. The 12 demonists didn't dare to chase anymore. That blood lightning had almost killed them. Yi Xian could withstand it because his physical body was strong. They didn't have such strong physical bodies. The 12 demonists were silent for a moment before turning to leave. They realized that the 12 of them couldn't do anything to this human. He was like a turtle, too damn good at taking beatings. Yi Xian ran all the way. His target was the Order Hall of the Cosmos God Court. Because there might be a star field transfer array leading to the 9 dimensions. However, he didn't know where the Order Hall of the Cosmos God Court was. He had to ask. Yi Xian directly arrived at Demonic City. Just as he arrived, the entire Demonic City was shocked. Because that calamity had also followed him. After Yi Xian entered Demonic City, Vast Ming immediately brought a group of people to block Yi Xian. Vast Ming stared at Yi Xian. What are you doing here? Actually, he was no longer chasing after Yi Xian. Because that mysterious force from back then had made him afraid. Yi Xian blinked and didn't speak. At this moment, a blood lightning suddenly descended from the sky. Seeing this, Vast Ming and the rest's expressions changed. He said angrily, "Block it." However, no one blocked it. Everyone retreated rapidly. Vast Underworld also hurriedly retreated, but Yi Xian's speed was even faster, and he had already run thousands of feet away. The blood lightning descended. Boom! The entire demonic city shook violently. Dust and smoke rose into the sky from below. Some of the demonic city's experts who were slow to react were directly turned into ashes. There were even some divine Valiant Realm experts among them. Forget about divine defense realm powerhouses, even heaven defense realm powerhouses were trash in front of this Shuelei. The expressions of all the experts in the surroundings had changed. This blood lightning was too terrifying. That Firmament Ming also felt a lingering fear. If he had been a little slower just now, he would have been dead. Because he absolutely couldn't withstand the blood lightning. Seeming to have thought of something, Mingcang suddenly looked at Yi Xian and said angrily, "You were the one who brought him here." Yi Xian glanced at the blood-red clouds in the sky, and then he said, "I want 10 billion top-grade devil crystals, 1,000 divine artifacts at the Heaven's Might Realm, and 10,000 divine artifacts at the Divine Might Realm. I want all kinds of top-grade healing pills and spirit treasures. All of you quickly go prepare them." All the demons here were infuriated when they heard this. Mingcang stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Are you trying to rob us?" Yi Xian gazed at Mingcang and said seriously, "Am I that sort of person? I'm borrowing. I'll return it in the future." Mingcang stared at Yi Xian while his eyes didn't conceal his killing intent at all. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. In the next moment, he charged towards Mingcang and the others. Mingcang and the others were just about to attack when a bolt of blood-red lightning suddenly descended from the sky. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. All of them immediately turned around and fled. Bang! A bolt of divine lightning descended, and some of the experts from the demonic race who were slow to react were instantly obliterated. The divine lightning struck the ground, causing the entire ground to explode apart while countless strands of dust and dirt swept into the sky. A few more bolts of divine lightning would practically obliterate the entire city. After Yi Xian avoided the bolt of divine lightning, he gazed at Mingcang and hurriedly said, "Quickly go prepare them. Otherwise, I won't leave today. I won't leave." The expressions of the other demonic race experts were unsightly to the extreme when they heard this. Especially Mingcang. "Damn it. This human is here to rob us." Meanwhile, an old demonic race expert suddenly spoke fiercely, "Human. Do you really intend to take us down with you? This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page." "Is that so?" Yi Xian gazed at the old demonic race expert and smiled, "I think it's worth it to trade one for all of them." The old demonic race expert was speechless. Mingcang suddenly spoke fiercely, "Human. My devil dimension won't compromise with you. Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian charged towards them once more. At the same time, a bolt of blood-red lightning suddenly descended from the sky, and then the entire sky became illusory. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene. Because the might of the blood-red lightning had become stronger. It was at least 2 times stronger than before. Yi Xian turned around and fled thousands of feet away in a flash. The blood-red lightning descended. Bang! Over a dozen God-rank realm experts from the devil dimension were obliterated, and the entire city started seething when the blood-red lightning descended into the city before it collapsed inch by inch. Mingcang, who just escaped calamity, turned extremely pale when he witnessed this scene, and his mind was buzzing. Right at this moment, the blood-red clouds in the sky suddenly started to rumble with lightning. At the same time, a strand of extremely terrifying pressure swept down. When they sensed the pressure, the fear in the eyes of the experts from the devil dimension transformed into terror. The might of the blood-red lightning within the blood-red clouds had grown even stronger. How could anyone resist it? Yi Xian gazed at the blood-red clouds in the sky. Actually, he was slightly panicked at this moment. He noticed that the blood-red lightning was growing more and more terrifying. Fortunately, it wasn't especially swift, otherwise, he would have been transformed into ash by now. Mingcang turned around to look at Yi Xian with scarlet-red eyes. "Are you leaving or not?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I'm not leaving." Mingcang spoke fiercely, "Do you really intend to take me down with you?" Yi Xian said angrily, "Motherfucker. Give me a little more. I'll lose face if you don't give me a little." Mingcang said furiously, 1 billion devil crystals. Yi Xian glared angrily at Mingcang, 1 billion? Do you think I'm a beggar? Ming Tsang stared fixedly at Yi Xian. 2 billion. Yi Xian shook his head. 5 billion devil crystals. 1,000 heaven-rank divine treasures and 10,000 divine-rank divine treasures. Not a single one less. Ming Tsang slowly clenched his fists while the killing intent in his eyes seemed material. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. Once this bolt of lightning descends, Devil City will vanish from this world. Ming Tsang slowly closed his eyes. Being robbed like this was simply an extraordinary humiliation to the devil dimension. It was a humiliation of the devil dimension. This human is too fucking much of a bully. When he thought up to here, Ming Tsang decided to fight to the death. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'm borrowing." Borrowing. I can write an IOU. As he spoke, he hurriedly tore off a corner of his clothes and wrote an IOU. After he finished writing the IOU, he tapped it lightly, and it flew over to Ming Tsang. As he gazed at the IOU, the killing intent in Ming Tsang's eyes lessened greatly. If I'm borrowing, then it doesn't seem to be too embarrassing. There's a difference between borrowing and seizing. Ming Tsang was slightly hesitant. Perish together? It isn't worth it. It would be such a loss if a group of devils were to perish together with a human. Moreover, there was an extraordinary spirit vein here. If this spirit vein was destroyed, then the devil dimension would fall into decline in the future. When he thought up to here, the killing intent in Ming Tsang's eyes lessened. Right at this moment, an enormous vortex suddenly appeared in the sky, and a terrifying bolt of blood-red lightning was condensing within the vortex. Yi Xian and Ming Tsang's expressions became unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Ming Tsang stopped thinking and hurriedly tapped with his finger, causing over 10 spatial rings to fly over to Yi Xian. "Human, I'm lending these to you. Understand?" Yi Xian didn't even spare them a glance before he put them away, and then he said, "How do I get to the enforcement hall of the Cosmos Divine Court?" Ming Tsang tapped with his finger, and a teleportation stone descended in front of Yi Xian. "Quickly fuck off. Leave now." Yi Xian took the teleportation stone and crushed it. Bang! Yi Xian vanished on the spot. Moreover, the blood-red clouds in the sky vanished along with him. Ming Tsang and the others instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw this scene. If that bolt of blood-red lightning had descended, then the devil dimension would really be gone. Ming Tsang's face sank as he gazed at the IOU. Borrow? Would that fellow return it? Yi Xian had just appeared in the sky when an invisible pressure suddenly enveloped him. This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. Subsequently, a bolt of blood-red divine lightning descended from the sky. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Xiao Ta, can you help me take it?" Xiao Ta hurriedly said, "Young master, my body is weak. I can't take it." Yi Xian, at this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Little cow, help me take it." As he spoke, Little Cow was directly thrown out of the pagoda by Xiao Ta. Little Cow was slightly stunned. Xiao Ta hurriedly said, "Good brother, I'll put in a good word for you the next time I see Little White. I'll ask her to help you improve." Little Cow looked at Xiao Ta, and his eyes lit up. "Really?" Xiao Ta nodded. "Really?" Little Cow was instantly filled with energy. He stomped his right foot on the ground and shot into the sky. He went head-on against that bolt of blood-red lightning. Bang! In the sky, that bolt of blood-red lightning shook violently, and then Little Cow smashed into the ground. Bang! The ground below directly exploded open, turning into a huge deep pit. In the deep crater, Little Cow wailed. "Xiao Ta, you tricked me." Xiao Ta, Yi Xian glanced at Little Cow. At this moment, Little Cow was in a bad state. Its scales were cracked, and its body was covered in blood. It could not take it either. In the deep crater, Little Cow kept wailing. "I'm not playing anymore." Yi Xian hurriedly asked Xiao Ta to keep Little Cow in the pagoda. At this moment, that bolt of blood-red lightning was already above his head. He took a deep breath and shot into the sky. Bang! As soon as he flew up, he fell. Yi Xian directly smashed into the deep crater where Little Cow had been. The ground within tens of thousands of miles collapsed, and countless mountains turned into dust. In the huge crater, Yi Xian was lying on his stomach, motionless. He felt that all the bones in his body were broken. He could not take it. That bolt of divine lightning still fell straight down. Just as he was about to enter the deep crater, Xiao Ta suddenly appeared above his head. Bang! That bolt of blood-red lightning directly hit Xiao Ta's body. However, Xiao Ta forcefully withstood that bolt of blood-red lightning. Xiao Ta wailed. "Young master, quickly run. I can't hold it for long." In the deep crater, Yi Xian turned around and looked at the sky. His gaze suddenly became somewhat blank. Why did his father seal his cultivation? What was it for? Training? That must be part of the reason. However, there must be a more important reason. Otherwise, when he reached the ordinary sword realm, the seal should have been removed. What was the reason? As if he thought of something, Yi Xian sat up. Seal. He realized a problem. Why didn't he take the initiative to break this seal? In the beginning, he tried, but he failed. However, after he failed, he gave up. Moreover, he thought that it was absolutely impossible to break the seal. Why? Because the person who set up this seal was the man in green, the invincible man. At this moment, he realized that other than relying on the three swords, there was another problem. He thought that the three swords were undefeatable. He had trapped himself in a circle. Everyone thought that the three swords were undefeatable, including Yi Xian. Therefore, even though the man in green had only left behind a strand of sword energy, he still thought that it was undefeatable and unbreakable. At this moment, Yi Xian finally understood. It wasn't the man in green's sword energy that sealed him. It was he who sealed himself. At this point, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He opened his palm and a sword suddenly appeared. The mind sword. This time, the sword didn't disappear. At this moment, the strand of sword energy inside Yi Xian's body suddenly floated out of his body. The sword energy trembled slightly and slowly, the sword energy transformed into a man. The man in green. The man in green looked at Yi Xian with a trace of relief on his face. As if he thought of something, the man in green raised his head and looked at the blood-colored clouds. Scram! The sky was silent for a moment. Then, the blood-colored clouds suddenly disappeared. P.S. Tickets, how many do you want? One ticket is also love. I realize that many readers read silently, vote silently, reward silently, and don't speak. To be honest, you can make an appearance. Otherwise, I think no one has read my book. After reading it, just make an appearance. End of this chapter. Chapter 1597. Along with the disappearance of the blood-colored cloud, the entire sky returns to its original calmness. Xiao Ta slowly descends. The green-gowned man opens his palm and Xiao Ta appears in his hand. Xiao Ta weakly says, "Master." The green-gowned man smiles, "Thank you for your hard work." With that, he sends Xiao Ta in front of Yi Xian. "It has accompanied me through countless hardships. Now, let it accompany me." Yi Xian keeps Xiao Ta and looks at the green-gowned man. "Has the seal been removed?" The green-gowned man shakes his head and smiles. "To remove it, you must defeat me." Yi Xian suddenly draws his sword and slashes. This sword is the strongest sword he has ever used. Because he is now above the common sword. However, this terrifying sword is directly clamped by 2 fingers. The green-gowned man looks at Yi Xian and smiles. Sneak attack? That's my style. With that, his 2 fingers lightly vibrate. Boom! Yi Xian is directly shaken hundreds of feet away. The moment he stops, his body directly cracks. It should be said that his body did not recover at all. But fortunately, his undying blood meridian is no longer suppressed. Under the recovery of the undying blood meridian, his body begins to recover at a very terrifying speed. After a while, his body has returned to normal. The green-gowned man looks at Yi Xian and slightly nods his head and smiles. This undying blood meridian is really good. It is indeed worthy to be ranked 3rd among the many blood meridians. Yi Xian is a little surprised. 3rd? Isn't it 2nd? The green-gowned man shakes his head. It is only 3rd. Yi Xian is a little confused. Then what blood meridian is ranked 1st? The green-gowned man smiles. Naturally, it is our family's Mad Demon blood meridian. Mad Demon blood meridian. Yi Xian blinks his eyes. 1st? The green-gowned man nods. Anyway, until now, I have never seen a blood meridian more powerful than ours. Yi Xian asked, then what's the 2nd-ranked bloodline? The green-clothed man said softly, it is a bloodline that is even more special than the undying bloodline. It is very strange. If there is a chance in the future, I will see it. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. Continue. Yi Xian nodded. He directly disappeared from where he was. In the distance, the green-robed man used his finger as a sword and pointed forward. Boom! A wave of sword light shattered, and Yi Xian retreated 10,000 zhang away along with his sword. Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man. I don't think I can beat him. The green-robed man shook his head. You can't rely on your feelings. You have to try anything. If you don't try, you'll never know if you can do it. Yi Xian nodded. All right. After saying that, he suddenly disappeared. Sword of life and death. At this moment, he was serious. In the distance, the azure-robed man pointed a finger. Boom! Yi Xian was sent flying again, but in the next moment, he rushed out again. Each sword was stronger than the last. Although he was repelled every time, Yi Xian became more and more excited as he fought. This was because he had just reached the mortal sword realm and wanted to have a good fight. He would treat it as practice. In an unknown star field, in the deepest part of this star field, there was an island floating. On the island, there was a hall. Cosmos Divine Court. This was the headquarters of the Cosmos Divine Court. And this star field was the Cosmos Divine Court star field. In the Cosmos Divine Court's hall, there was only one person. It was the god official. The god official sat at the side, seemingly waiting for someone. After an unknown period of time, a woman walked into the hall. Wu Ku. After Wu Ku walked into the hall, he sat opposite the god official. Both of them, there was no reply. At this moment, an old man walked into the hall. After entering the hall, he glanced at the 2 people in the hall, then walked to the side and leaned against a pillar. He did not choose to sit. This was because the 2 seats closest to the front were occupied. Whether he sat on the left or the right, he was inferior. Other than the laws of the universe and the God Master, who was qualified to sit above him? The undying old man. He was the person who had lived the longest in the Cosmos Divine Court. It was said that he had been bestowed a word by the laws of eternal life, so he had an extremely long lifespan. It could be said that the history of the Cosmos Divine Court was not as long as his. No one knew how strong he was, but one could imagine the strength of a person who could live for so long. At this moment, 2 people walked in. It was a man and a woman. The man was wearing a black robe and held a sword, while the woman was wearing a black robe and held a blade. After the two walked into the hall, they glanced at the god official and Wu Ku. They did not sit but walked to another pillar and stood. Yin Yang Saint Envoy. The two had reached the mortal realm hundreds of thousands of years ago, which was the breaking mortal realm. Now, they were even more unfathomable. In the Cosmos Divine Court, one was number 1 in the Blade Dao, while the other was number 1 in the Sword Dao. At this moment, another old man walked in. The old man was wearing a black robe, his entire body exuded an eerie aura, and his hands were as thin as bones. Undead God Monarch. He was in charge of the undead in a star field, and he had the most subordinates in the Cosmos Divine Court. Actually, the Dead Soul Star Field was almost destroyed by the Cosmos Divine Court back then, because the undead under the Undead God Monarch were too many. Anyone killed by the Undead God Monarch, no matter how strong, would become an undead and be restricted by him. Therefore, the Dead Soul Star Field was very terrifying back then, and it even wanted to destroy the Cosmos Divine Court. However, the laws of the universe appeared and conquered the Dead Soul's star field. No one knew which universal law appeared, but they knew that the Dead Soul star field was now under the control of the Cosmos Divine Court. At this moment, everyone in the hall frowned at the same time, and they all looked towards a corner in the distance. There was a little girl squatting there. The little girl looked like she was only 15 or 16 years old, and her hair was a little long. Her hair covered half of her face, so only the left side of her face could be seen. Her chin was resting on her knees, and in her hands was a little wooden doll that looked exactly like her. When they saw the little girl, the expressions of all the experts in the hall changed subtly. Even Wu Ku and the god official had a hint of caution in their eyes. This little girl was the most terrifying assassin in the history of the Cosmos Divine Court. The god of assassins. She didn't have a name, or rather, no one knew what her name was. And she was the second oldest person in the Cosmos Divine Court. The little girl was very special. In the Cosmos Divine Court, even the God Masters wouldn't forcefully control her. Other than her terrifying assassination ability, there was another reason, and that was that this little girl was adopted by the first God Master of the Cosmos Divine Court. Adopted by the founder of the Cosmos Divine Court. However, for some unknown reason, she always looked like a little girl, and her mind had always been that of a little girl. No one knew, and no one dared to ask. Even the undying old man, who had lived the longest, was extremely afraid of this little girl, and never provoked her. This was because once she assassinated someone, it was simply too terrifying. Unfortunately, the Cosmos Divine Court couldn't order her directly. Otherwise, with her terrifying assassination ability, the people on the Cosmos Divine Court's wanted list would have been long dead. No one expected that this little girl would actually come. At this moment, another person walked into the hall. It was a lady in a white robe. Master Yen. The only legendary master speech of the Cosmos Divine Court, Yen Xiaofan. She was the one who built the transfer arrays between the various starfields, and she only had this ability. Only she had this ability. And she wasn't just a legendary master speech, she was also a legendary array master, legendary rune master, legendary blacksmith, legendary pill master. She was omnipotent. In the Cosmos Divine Court, she was the most popular. After Yen Xiaofan entered the hall, everyone in the hall nodded towards her. Facing everyone's greetings, Yen Xiaofan nodded slightly as a response. Then, she sat beside Wu Ku, picked up a thick ancient book, and started reading. At this moment, two ladies walked into the hall. The guardians of the universe, Ma Yi and Mu Xiaodao. Seeing Mu Xiaodao, everyone in the hall instantly felt a headache. In terms of strength, Mu Xiaodao wasn't as strong as some of the people in the hall. However, everyone in the hall, including the God Master of the Cosmos Divine Court, didn't dare to underestimate her. This was because she was the guardian of the universe. She was personally chosen by the laws of the universe. Moreover, the guardians of the universe had an ultimate life-saving method, which was to borrow the power of the laws of the universe. It could be said that if they went all out, they would be able to fight against anyone here. Of course, no one was willing to fight against them. They were equivalent to the representatives of the laws of the universe. Wouldn't fighting against them be going against the laws of the universe? Mu Xiaodao glanced at everyone in the hall and smiled, "Hello everyone." No one responded. Mu Xiaodao walked in front of the god official. The god official hesitated for a moment before standing up. "Miss Mu, sit." As he spoke, he walked to the side. He didn't want to offend this woman. This woman was too terrifying when she was reckless. Mu Xiaodao didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. She glanced at everyone and said, "I just returned from the Devil Domain. I can tell you a piece of news. That Yi Xian's cultivation has been sealed." The god official nodded. His cultivation has indeed been sealed. However, he isn't worthy of so many of us targeting him. We gathered here today for another purpose. Mu Xiaodao shook her head. "That fellow isn't simple. I feel that if you really want to deal with him, it's best that everyone goes to the Devil Domain now and deal with him together. He will definitely die." Everyone in the hall shook their heads. Even though Yi Xian possessed the constitution of disaster, he was only ranked 36th on the wanted list, so he wasn't worthy of them making a move against him. Mu Xiaodao shook her head and sighed, "We're giving him a chance." The god official said, "The reason we gathered here today is to deal with the Nether Pavilion and the Great Demon King, Mo Xiaoshuang." Mu Xiaodao spoke indifferently, "I suggest we kill Yi Xian first." Wu Ku glanced at Mu Xiaodao and remained silent. On the other side, the undying old man suddenly said, "Miss Mu, do you think that Yi Xian poses a greater threat than the Nether Pavilion and the Great Demon King, Mo Xiaoshuang?" Mu Xiaodao nodded, "I think so." The undying old man shook his head with a smile and remained silent. Everyone in the hall remained silent as well. Meanwhile, the god official spoke abruptly, "Miss Mu is right. We really can't allow Yi Xian to grow. When I saw Yi Xian, his cultivation was sealed, and his body was at the Unity Realm." As he spoke, he glanced at the hall. "Who's willing to deal with him?" No one in the hall responded. A Unity Realm wasn't worthy of them taking action. At this moment, the undying old man suddenly said, "I feel that everyone in the hall isn't suitable. Kill a Unity Realm? Won't we be laughed at by others? Let the younger generation of the Divine Palace do it. We can also train them. In any case, Yi Xian is in the Devil Domain, and the Undying Emperor clan can't help him. Without a backer, he's just an ant." Hearing this, everyone in the hall nodded in agreement. At the side, Mu Xiaodao lay on a chair and shook her head, "I want to change teammates." At this moment, she wanted to rely on Yi Xian. Chapter 1598. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao felt very helpless. She was very clear about Yi Xian's natural talent, and his speed of improvement could only be described as terrifying. Most importantly, this guy had 3 extremely terrifying backers behind him. The Cosmos Court didn't know much about the 3 swordsmen, but she didn't. She had dealt with 2 of the swordsmen, and she knew how terrifying those 2 swordsmen were. Even though those 2 swordsmen were restrained by the laws of the universe, she wasn't sure if the laws of the universe could restrain them. Suddenly, Yan Xiaoxiao spoke, "You should listen to Miss Mu's opinion." Everyone looked at Yan Xiaoxiao, and Yan Xiaoxiao glanced at them. "We lost the battle against the Undying Emperor clan." The undying old man shook his head. "He didn't kill them. It was that azure-clothed man." Mu Xiaodao smiled, "And here I thought I didn't know about him." As she spoke, she suddenly frowned. "Do you know anything about him?" No one in the hall spoke. Obviously, they didn't. They really hadn't come into contact with him. Meanwhile, the undying old man suddenly said, "Miss Mu, is that swordsman very strong?" Ma Yi gazed coldly at the undying old man. His clone almost killed the seventh swordsman. "Isn't that strong?" The undying old man frowned slightly when he heard that. The expressions of everyone here had changed slightly as well. A clone almost killed the seventh swordsman? That was quite terrifying. Meanwhile, a voice resounded from outside, "Everyone should pay attention to Yi Xian and that azure-clothed man." A woman walked in as the voice resounded. She had a ponytail, wore a light green dress, and held a scroll in her hand. She was an educated youth. She was in charge of all the information systems in the Cosmos Court. She could be said to be the all-knowing scholar of the Cosmos Court. No, she was the all-knowing scholar of the entire universe. She glanced at everyone and smiled. "Miss Mu hasn't explained everything. Firstly, that azure-clothed man isn't strong, he's extremely strong. It can be said that no one in our hall is a match for him." As she spoke, she looked at the divine official. "Sir Divine Official, I was injured by a strand of sword energy. It was left behind by that azure-robed man, and it was left behind tens of thousands of years ago." Hearing this, the Grand Priest's face instantly became solemn. That wisp of sword energy had almost killed him. The undying old man looked at the youth and frowned. "Is it that terrifying?" The educated youth looked at the undying old man. "Are you questioning me?" The undying old man was about to speak when the divine official suddenly said, "If that strand of sword chi really belongs to him, then his strength is absolutely not something we can contend against." The educated youth nodded. "Besides this green-robed man, there is also a woman in a plain dress." The strength of these two people was extremely terrifying. Fortunately, both of them are restrained by the laws of the universe. The law of the universe. The expressions of everyone here instantly became solemn when they heard this. To be able to force the laws of the universe to come out and restrain him, that was not an ordinary kind of terror. Ji Qing continued, "I can understand that your target is the Nether Hall and Heaven's Sanctum, but don't forget that Yi Xian has the disaster physique. He is the one that the laws of the universe want to eliminate the most." The Grand Priest nodded. "I know. However, the great demon king of the Heaven's Sanctum has summoned all the experts of the Heaven's Sanctum and declared war against us. We have no choice but to deal with it. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome." The Heaven's Sanctum. The educated youth fell silent for a moment before he said, "We can't underestimate the Heaven's Sanctum. According to my investigations, the great demon king has summoned the 6 great demon kings and 12 demon generals. That woman wants to take advantage of the absence of the laws of the universe to fight us. And that Nether Hall. If they have the chance, they will definitely act as well." The Grand Priest nodded. "It's not that we don't take Yi Xian seriously, but we have to deal with the Heaven's Sanctum and Nether Hall first. Of course, as Miss Mu said, we can't underestimate Yi Xian." As he spoke, he glanced at the hall. "Who will deal with Yi Xian?" Right at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in the main hall. The hall instantly fell silent when they saw this figure. A divine lord. But it wasn't his main body that had come. The divine lord opened his palm, and a command token floated out slowly. The command token floated to the nameless little girl who was hiding in the corner. The little girl raised her head and glanced at the command token. After a while, she picked it up and stood up. The divine lord said, "Yi Xian." The little girl clenched her right hand lightly, and the command token vanished. She turned to look at the educated youth, and the latter took out a scroll and placed it before the little girl, all the information about him. The little girl picked up the scroll and turned around to leave. Not far away, Wuxia's face darkened when he saw that. She wasn't afraid of anyone in the hall who went to the devil territory, but she was most afraid of this little girl because she was the most dangerous existence in the hall. Even the Divine Lord wasn't as dangerous as her. She was an extremely terrifying assassin. How terrifying was she? It could be said that she wasn't confident that she could survive if the little girl came to kill her. If it was an open battle, then she wasn't afraid of anyone in the hall, including the Divine Lord and the little girl. But the problem was that the little girl was an assassin. Wuxia's eyes were filled with worry. Meanwhile, the Divine Lord suddenly said, "Leave Yi Xian to her. Let's discuss how to destroy the Heaven Estate and Nether Pavilion." Mu Xiaodao didn't stay in the hall, and she hurriedly followed the little girl out. But when she stepped out of the hall, the nameless little girl had vanished. Mu Xiaodao's face fell when she witnessed this scene. She hadn't expected that the Divine Lord would actually be able to make the little girl fight. After all, besides the laws of the universe, no one could make the little girl fight. Even the laws of the universe might not be able to. The little girl was extremely strange. Meanwhile, Ma Yi followed her out. Ma Yi suddenly said, "Are you worried about him?" Mu Xiaodao smiled, "Just say what you want to say. Don't be so sarcastic." Ma Yi gazed at Mu Xiaodao, "You don't want him to die, right?" Mu Xiaodao nodded. Ma Yi stared fixedly at Mu Xiaodao, "Xiaodao, your thoughts are very dangerous." Mu Xiaodao chuckled lightly, "Ma Yi, let's discuss something we've already discussed. Do people with calamity constitutions really deserve to die?" Ma Yi was about to speak when Mu Xiaodao continued, "He just wants to live. Everyone has the right to live, isn't that right?" Ma Yi shook her head, "But we are the guardians of the universe. We should protect the laws of the universe." Mu Xiaodao suddenly asked, "What if the laws of the universe are wrong?" Hearing this, Ma Yi's face instantly changed. She turned to look at Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao smiled, "I was just casually saying." As she spoke, she looked towards the horizon. "From my standpoint, he does deserve to die because I am the guardian of the universe. But from my personal perspective, I don't think he's wrong. He just wants to live. The laws of the universe should be targeting that mysterious person, not him, Yi Xian. Moreover, there are many suspicious points. For example, why does the mysterious person in his body want to go against the laws? Why does the laws of the universe still target him despite knowing that he has 3 super experts behind him?" As she spoke, her eyes narrowed. The biggest suspicious point is the identity of the mysterious person. In the entire Cosmos God Court, other than the laws of the universe, no one knows the identity of the mysterious person, including the educated youth. Ma Yi said in a deep voice, "Xiaodao, I know this, but you have to be clear about your own identity." Mu Xiaodao smiled, "I know. Are you afraid that my life will be in danger?" Ma Yi nodded, "He's my best friend. I don't want anything to happen to him." Mu Xiaodao smiled, "Don't worry, I'm very smart. I won't be as stupid as Xiao Er, courting death for a man." Ma Yi looked at Mu Xiaodao, wanting to say something but hesitating. Mu Xiaodao blinked, "Don't tell me you think that I like him." Ma Yi nodded vigorously. Mu Xiaodao laughed, "What a joke. Ma Yi, I suggest you watch more palace intrigues. The women in there can have many wives, hee hee." Ma Yi, Mu Xiaodao didn't say anything else and walked away. Ma Yi suddenly said, "Xiaodao, don't be reckless." Mu Xiaodao waved her hand, "Don't worry, I won't investigate." Ma Yi looked at Mu Xiaodao with a trace of worry in her eyes. Actually, she understood Mu Xiaodao better. Don't be fooled by this guy's carefree attitude, as if he didn't care about anything. Once he cared about something, he would be crazier than anyone else. What she was most worried about was that Mu Xiaodao was interested in Yi Xian, because if that was really the case, Mu Xiaodao would do anything. Thinking of this, Ma Yi suddenly shook her head, "Damn that man. The next time I see that Yi Xian, I'm going to kill him." At this time, Yan Xiaoxiao also walked out of the main hall. She quickly walked into the distance, but before long, a woman appeared in front of her. Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yan Xiaoxiao and smiled. Miss Yan, do you have those talismans that can transmit sound from afar? Yan Xiaoxiao nodded, yes. Mu Xiaodao blinked, can you give me 2? Yan Xiaoxiao took out 2 transparent talismans and handed them to Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao glanced at Yan Xiaoxiao, aren't you going to ask me what I'm going to do with them? Yan Xiaoxiao, inform Yi Xian. After saying that, she hugged her thick book and walked into the distance. On the spot, Mu Xiaodao was stunned. At this time, Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly stopped and said, whether it's good or evil doesn't depend on one's physique. Miss Mu, the truth often means death. Take care. After saying that, she quickly disappeared into the distance. Mu Xiaodao looked at the sound transmission talisman in her hand. After a while, she crushed one and said softly, bitch. Call big brother or father. Otherwise, you're going to die. Her voice disappeared along with the sound transmission talisman. In the infernal domain. Yi Xian flew out again. This time, he flew almost 1,000 feet away. In the distance, the man in green said with a smile, continue. Yi Xian climbed up from the ground. He glanced at the man in green and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Father, can you go easy on me? Hearing this, the man in green was stunned. The next moment, he laughed out loud, yes. Absolutely. Let's go, father will show you off. After saying that, he suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side, and then he took Yi Xian with him and vanished. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Brothers, I've been working hard to save up manuscripts. I want to do something big. Chapter 1599. In the sky, the man in green was flying on his sword with Yi Xian. The man in green was full of smiles. It was obvious that he was very happy. In fact, he felt guilty towards Yi Xian because he had never accompanied Yi Xian since he was young. However, he had no other choice. If Yi Xian kept following him, although he would be safe, he would be crippled. Comfort could destroy a person. Although Yi Xian was not very strong now, he had a good temperament. He was courageous and ruthless. Yi Xian glanced at the green-robed man and felt rather complicated. In fact, he was really unfamiliar with his parents. Because no matter if it was his father or mother, neither of them had ever accompanied him. Hate? Of course he hated them. However, after knowing that the man in green was helping him find the source of the mysterious man, he did not hate him so much anymore. Of course, the main reason was that his sister, Yi Ling, was alive and well. Otherwise, he would not forgive anyone. At this moment, the man in green stopped. Yi Xian looked in front of him, but there was nothing there. The man in green drew a line with his fingers. Pfft! The space in front of them cracked open, and within the cracked space was a world of its own. The green-robed man led Yi Xian in. What entered their eyes was an endless mountain range. They could not see the end of it. Yi Xian was curious. Where is this? The man in green smiled. The Earth Spirit Clan. A clan that lives underground. Back then, they were in danger of being exterminated. I happened to pass by and saved them. Let's go. After saying that, he led Yi Xian into the vast mountains. Soon, they came to a huge cave. As soon as they arrived at the cave, an old man appeared in front of them. The old man was a little short and had a goatee. The old man was very cautious. However, when he saw the man in green, his expression changed drastically and he said with a trembling voice, "Guardian?" The man in green laughed. "Is Shan Qiu still here?" The old man knelt down. "Guardian," as he spoke, he kept kowtowing. The green-robed man shook his head and smiled. He gently lifted his right hand and helped the old man up. The azure-robed man smiled and said, "Let's go in." The old man quickly said, "No, no. Guardian, please wait a moment." With that, he turned around and disappeared into the distance. The green-shirt man looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "The Earth Spirit tribe is a special tribe. They aren't very strong, but their forging skills are top-notch. It can be said that their forging skills are the best in the entire universe." It was also because of this that they were coveted by many powerful forces and were almost exterminated. Yi Xian was just about to speak when a group of people suddenly ran over, and the person in the lead was a white-haired old man. The white-haired old man was first stunned when he saw the green-clothed man, and then he charged over to the green-clothed man. He intended to embrace the green-clothed man, but he noticed that the green-clothed man was only a clone. The green-robed man smiled and said, "Shan Qiu, how have you been?" Shan Qiu laughed and said, "Brother Yang, I've missed you so much." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and asked, "This is?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "My son." Yi Xian quickly bowed and said, "Hello, Uncle Shan Qiu." Since the green-robed man was his father's brother, he had to call him uncle. Shan Qiu was stunned when he heard Yi Xian call him uncle. Then, he laughed and said, "So it's my nephew. Good. Very good. Come, let's go in and talk." The green-robed man shook his head and said, "This sword chi is about to disappear." Shan Qiu looked at the green-robed man and sighed, "You brat, you didn't even come in person." The green-robed man smiled and said, "There will be a chance in the future." Shan Qiu nodded and said, "You must have something to tell me." The green-robed man pointed at Yi Xian and said, "Take care of him." Shan Qiu looked at Yi Xian and said, "It's no big deal." The green-robed man smiled and said, "Thank you." Shan Qiu was a little unhappy and said, "Why are you saying this to my brother?" The green-robed man laughed and said, "Shan Qiu, don't forge iron every day. If you have the time, you should cultivate more. Don't let me see you when you become a pile of dirt." As he spoke, he gradually became illusory. Yi Xian quickly said, "Father, do you have anything for me?" The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian and smiled and said, "Above the mortal state is the breaking mortal state. Do you know what's above the breaking mortal state?" Yi Xian shook his head and said, "I don't know." The green-robed man smiled and asked, "Do you want to break through to the breaking mortal state immediately?" Yi Xian was overjoyed and quickly said, "Of course I want to. Even in my dreams." The green-robed man blinked and said, "Dream on then. You can have everything in your dreams." As soon as he finished, he disappeared. Yi Xian was speechless. At the side, Shan Qiu heard the conversation between Yi Xian and his son and could not help but laugh. Yi Xian was speechless. How dare his father play tricks on him? At this moment, Shan Qiu suddenly pulled Yi Xian's arm and said, "Nephew, let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he led Yi Xian into the cave. The rest of the Earth Spirit clan members quickly backed away. After entering the cave, Yi Xian discovered that there was a huge city underground. This city shocked Yi Xian. The entire city was almost 300 meters tall and the city walls were made of a dark golden metal. There was not a single crack in the city. It was as if it was made by nature. Along the way, countless Earth Spirit clan members watched. As they entered the city, Shan Qiu suddenly shouted, "Open the Earth Spirit's treasury." The Earth Spirit's treasury. Hearing this, the countless Earth Spirit clan members suddenly became excited. The Earth Spirit's treasury. This was the forbidden area of the Earth Spirit clan. Only the leader of the clan could enter because all the best treasures of the Earth Spirit clan were gathered there. The highest level of blacksmiths were legendary blacksmiths, and only the most perfect works of legendary blacksmiths could be placed within the treasury. The most perfect. Not even the slightest flaw was qualified to be placed within the treasury. Even if it was the work of a legendary blacksmith, it was still not qualified. Only the work of a legendary blacksmith was qualified to be placed within the treasury. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to forge such a perfect treasure. Even a legendary blacksmith would need at least a few hundred or even 1,000 years to forge such a perfect treasure. Even though Yi Xian didn't know where the treasury was, based on the attitude of the Earth Spirit clan members around him, he knew that he might be rich this time. I must calm down. I must be reserved. What treasures have I not seen? In next to no time, Shanqiu led Yi Xian to an enormous crystal pavilion. 2 black-robed elders stood in front of the crystal pavilion. They were the guardians of the treasury. They were also the strongest members of the Earth Spirit clan. Yi Xian glanced at the 2 of them. He couldn't sense their auras, but he could sense a trace of danger from them. This shocked Yi Xian. He was at the breaking mortality realm now, and there were very few things that could make him feel danger. At this moment, the old man on the left suddenly said, "Shanqiu, is that really the aura of the guardian?" Shanqiu laughed and said, "Elder Zhua, you're right. It's the guardian." Elder Zhua said softly, "Unfortunately, it's just a clone." Shanqiu smiled and said, "Zhua Changlong, this is Brother Yang's son." Yi Xian hurriedly bowed to them respectfully. "Greetings, elders." Elder Zhua glanced at Yi Xian and said, "They have the same bloodline. Little fellow, you don't have to be so courteous." Zhua Qiu smiled and said, "Elder Zhua, I want to bring this little fellow in to pick a few things." Elder Zhua nodded. "Of course." At this moment, Elder Zhua, who had been silent, suddenly said, 3. Pick 3. As soon as these words were spoken, the other members of the Earth Spirit clan instantly gasped. 3 pieces. After all, even the patriarch of the Earth Spirit clan only had the qualifications to enter once every 1,000 years, and he could only choose a single treasure. But this human could choose 3 as soon as he arrived. Of course, no one felt jealous or displeased. Because he was the son of the guardian. Meanwhile, Elder Zhua suddenly said, 3? That's too stingy. Little fellow, you can choose 10 once you enter. 10. Countless members of the Earth Spirit clan were stunned. Zhua Qiu was quite surprised as well. 10. That wasn't a small number. Because every single treasure within the Guardian was truly priceless. Elder Zhua glanced at Elder Zhua but didn't say anything. Elder Zhua smiled, "Go on in." Shanqiu nodded and was about to lead Yi Xian in. Meanwhile, a clear and melodious voice resounded from behind, "Father, I want to go in as well." Yi Xian turned around and saw a woman around the age of 17 or 18. She was extremely beautiful, and there was a small hammer hanging from her waist. Shanqiu frowned slightly, "You can't go in." The woman spoke in a slightly aggrieved tone, "I just want to go in and have a look at the masterpieces. I don't want the treasures within." Shanqiu sighed softly, "Little girl, you can't go in." "Wait." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Let her go in with us." Shanqiu gazed at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian gazed at the 2 elders. "Can I?" Elder Zhua grinned, "Yes." Of course he had to give them face. Yi Xian bowed slightly, "Thank you." The woman walked over to Yi Xian and chuckled, "Thank you, big brother." Yi Xian smiled, "I'm Yi Xian. What about you?" The woman smiled, "Shan Ling." Yi Xian smiled, "Younger sister Shan Ling. Let's go in." As he spoke, he and Shan Ling walked towards a place not far away. Shanqiu glanced at Yi Xian and a trace of gratitude flashed in his eyes. Soon, he followed. After a few people entered, Elder Yu suddenly said, 10. Elder Zhua said, "If it wasn't for his father, the Earth Spirit tribe would have been gone." Elder Zhua was silent. Elder Zhua continued, this little guy has already reached the breaking mortal realm. Elders Wu nodded and did not say anything else. Because he understood. The father was the guardian of the Earth Spirit tribe, and the son was a genius. He could also become the guardian of the Earth Spirit tribe. After entering the Earth Spirit treasure vault, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, "Uncle, I've seen a worn-out ancient shield before. That ancient shield can reflect all attacks. Does that ancient shield belong to the Earth Spirit treasure vault?" Shan Qiu smiled. "You should be talking about the sorcerer armor shield. That treasure was forged by the Earth Spirit tribe, but it's not from the Earth Spirit treasure vault because it's a defective item and is not qualified to enter the Earth Spirit treasure vault. When we asked your father to choose a treasure, he didn't want anything. In the end, we couldn't accept it, so he randomly picked a broken shield from the outside and said that it was for a certain little guy to play with. We were all very embarrassed because that sorcerer armor shield was too trashy. Defective item. Not qualified to enter the Earth Spirit treasure vault. Too trashy." Yi Xian suddenly felt like he was floating. FPZW. Chapter 1600. Needless to say, Yi Xian was extremely shocked. He was very clear about the terror of that dilapidated ancient shield. That shield could even reflect Mu Xiaodao's flying daggers. With that shield, he could practically take on 3 guardians of the universe at once. However, that shield was trash in Shan Qiu's eyes. Yi Xian was looking forward to the land spirit's treasury. Soon, the 3 of them entered the treasury. What entered his eyes were more than 100 red pillars of light, and within each pillar of light was a treasure of various types. Yi Xian walked to the nearest light pillar. Inside the light pillar was a black round shield. The round shield was as smooth as a mirror and there were many strange runes on its surface. Yi Xian was curious. "Uncle Shan Qiu, this is?" Shan Qiu smiled. "This is the God-trembling shield. It's a perfect inferior legendary grade." Yi Xian asked, "Is it powerful?" Shan Qiu shook his head. "Not especially powerful. Its core function is to reflect damage. It can reflect twice the damage." Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said, "Twice?" Shan Qiu nodded. "For example, if you slash it with your sword, it can reflect twice the power of your sword." Yi Xian gulped. "Uncle, isn't this powerful?" Shan Qiu smiled. "It's just so. Let's go to the next level." As he spoke, he pulled Yi Xian to the next level. Yi Xian looked at the God-trembling shield reluctantly. Actually, he really wanted to take it with him. Shan Ling suddenly covered his mouth and laughed. "Brother Yi, there's even better stuff behind." Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. He was a little inexperienced. Soon, the 3 of them arrived at the next level. When they entered the next level, Yi Xian saw more than 60 purple light pillars. It was almost half of the previous level. Yi Xian walked to another light pillar. At this moment, Shan Qiu suddenly pulled him. "Don't look at this. Come, look here." Yi Xian was speechless. The hill brought Yi Xian to one of the light pillars. Inside the light pillar was a black mirror with a dark gold frame. On top of the mirror, there was a strange red rune. Yi Xian looked at Shan Qiu. Shan Qiu smiled and said, "This is the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth." Yi Xian quickly asked, "What's the use?" Shan Qiu laughed. "This item is extremely useful. It can be duplicated." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Copy?" Hill nodded. "Once this item is activated, it can duplicate an opponent's doppelganger. This doppelganger will have at least 70% of the opponent's combat power." As he spoke, he paused for a moment and said, "Of course, an expert at the level of your father can't be replicated." Yi Xian said softly, only 70%? Actually, he was a little disappointed because if it only had 70% of its power, it would be worse than the shield from before. At this moment, Shan Qiu smiled and said, if it's just a copy, it definitely doesn't have the right to be placed here. Yi Xian quickly asked, what other uses does it have? Shan Qiu smiled and said, it can make 10 copies. Moreover, it can also duplicate itself. 10. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression changed. If it was only 1, it would be useless. But if it was 10, it would be completely different. 10. 10 of him against 1 Mu Xiaodao, just thinking about it was exciting. If the opponent was stronger than him, it would be equivalent to having 10 more super experts. Shan Qiu smiled and said, are you tempted? Yi Xian nodded vigorously. 10. That was a little too ridiculous. Shan Qiu laughed and then silently chanted a spell. Soon, the purple light pillar suddenly split open and the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth floated out. Shan Qiu smiled and said, drip a drop of blood. Yi Xian nodded and said, all right. As he spoke, he bent his finger and a drop of blood entered the mirror. The mysterious mirror of heaven and earth trembled slightly and directly shot a ray of light into the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! Yi Xian's entire body trembled. The next moment, the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth turned into a ray of white light and entered the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Then, a small mark of the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth appeared between Yi Xian's eyebrows but quickly disappeared. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he could feel the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth. Yi Xian opened his palm and the mysterious mirror of heaven and earth appeared in his hand. The next moment, suddenly, 10 Yi Xians appeared beside him. 10 clones. Yi Xian looked at Shan Qiu and said, their combat strength? Shan Qiu smiled and said, they can perfectly duplicate your combat consciousness. Yi Xian suddenly slashed his sword towards the right and the clone on the right disappeared. When it appeared again, it was already several feet away. The next moment, a sword suddenly appeared half an inch in front of his eyebrows. Sword of life and death. However, before the sword could come into contact with his eyebrows, it was caught by 2 fingers. The next moment, a ray of sword light suddenly slashed straight down from the top of his head. Sword drawing technique. Yi Xian was a little shocked. This clone actually knew his sword technique. Moreover, this clone's sword principle was actually at the breaking mortality stage. Of course, there was a difference. It should be said that it was a fake breaking mortality stage. Yi Xian moved his mind and the clone that was attacking immediately stopped. Then, it retreated to the side and stood respectfully. Beside him, Shan Qiu smiled and said, how is it? Yi Xian said in a low voice, Uncle, other than powerhouses at my father's level, can this mysterious mirror of heaven and earth be duplicated by other powerhouses? Shan Qiu shook his head and said, it's not that exaggerated. Some special powerhouses can't be duplicated. It can be said that the limit of what it can duplicate is powerhouses above the breaking mortality stage. Moreover, the clone that duplicates powerhouses above the breaking mortality stage can only have about 60% of their combat strength. Yi Xian nodded slightly. If it could even duplicate powerhouses of the breaking mortality stage, it would be too crazy. However, to be able to duplicate powerhouses above the breaking mortality stage, one had to admit that it was quite amazing. Although it could only have 60% of their combat strength, there were still 10 of them. It was a godly tool for group fights. Shan Qiu said again, do you know why this godly item is called the perfect legendary godly item? Yi Xian shook his head. Shan Qiu smiled and said, because even if the clone that is created by this item dies, it can't cause any harm to your original body. In order to achieve this, the legendary blacksmith that created this item spent hundreds of years researching it. Yi Xian said softly, impressive. Shan Qiu nodded. My clan has a unique advantage in terms of smithing. Moreover, everyone is very interested in smithing. However, my clan has no interest in cultivation. Therefore, my clan's combat strength is a little weak. If it wasn't for your father, even if my clan wasn't exterminated, would have to submit to others and become their slaves. Yi Xian was a little curious. Uncle, which force did you guys back then? Shan Qiu shook his head and said, there were all kinds of forces. Among them, there was the shadow of the Cosmos Palace. They were rather tactful. They said that they wanted us to join the Cosmos Palace and that they could protect us. However, we have to hand over 70% of the godly items that we forge every year. Hand over 70%. Yi Xian fell silent. He had to admit that their appetite was quite big. Shan Qiu continued, the one that almost exterminated my Earth Spirit clan was the Beast Demon clan. They wanted to exterminate us back then because they wanted to obtain a super godly armor from my Earth Spirit clan, the invincible god of war armor. Yi Xian was a little curious. Invincible god of war armor? Shan Qiu nodded. It was a super godly item that was forged by 9 legendary blacksmiths. It could be said to be the most perfect armor in the history of my Earth Spirit clan. Not only was it forged by 9 legendary blacksmiths, it was also forged with countless precious materials from my Earth Spirit clan. It could be said that this is a piece of armor that my Earth Spirit clan forged with all their might. It is also the pride of my Earth Spirit clan. Yi Xian blinked his eyes. Can I take a look? Shan Qiu hesitated for a while and said, this, you can definitely take a look, but, Yi Xian said seriously, I'm not taking it. I'll just take a look. Shan Qiu smiled. All right. I'll bring you to take a look later. Come, there's a treasure here that's not bad. It's suitable for you. After that, he brought Yi Xian to the other side. Along the way, Yi Xian kept looking at the light pillars. To be honest, he wanted all of them. However, he couldn't be like that. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He looked at one of the light pillars. Within the purple light pillar, there was a golden dragon seal. Dragon seal. Yi Xian was a little curious. Uncle, this is? Shan Qiu smiled. This is the heavenly dragon seal. It contains the qi of the mountains and rivers. With this seal, not only will you be protected by the heavenly dragon, you can also use this seal to strengthen your own dragon energy. Although it's not bad, it's not suitable for you. This is because this seal can only be used to its best effect on an emperor. In other words, if an emperor has this seal, not only will his cultivation be much easier, he can also control this seal to gather the power of a country. Yi Xian suddenly said, Uncle, I want this. Shan Qiu was a little surprised. Nephew, this seal is not suitable for you. Yi Xian smiled. I have a wife who happens to be an emperor. She's very suitable. Shan Qiu smiled. All right. As he spoke, he silently recited an incantation. The beam of light directly shattered, and the heavenly dragon seal within it directly flew to Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and kept the heavenly dragon seal. Shan Qiu smiled. Nephew, your sword principle is at the broken mortality realm, right? Yi Xian nodded and smiled. Yes. Shan Qiu smiled. Then, you'll like this treasure very much. It's suitable for you. Yi Xian was a little curious. What is it? Shan Qiu laughed. You'll see it soon. As he spoke, he brought Yi Xian to a place not far away. Yi Xian was still looking around. He had to admit that the treasures here were too terrifying. At this moment, he finally understood why the Earth Spirit clan was coveted by others. The treasures of this clan were not ordinary terrifying. If any force obtained the treasures of the Earth Spirit clan, their strength would increase by at least a few times. At this moment, Shan Qiu stopped. He pointed at a light pillar in the distance and smiled. This is it. Yi Xian looked at the light pillar. When he saw the treasure in the light pillar, his eyes instantly lit up. Chapter 1601. Within the purple pillar of light was a sword box. The sword box was dark gold in color. There was a golden talisman drawn on the front. The back of the sword box was painted with a small black sword. There was a drop of blood on the tip of the small black sword. Yi Xian asked curiously, "Uncle, what is this?" Shan Qiu smiled, "Burial sword box." Yi Xian blinked, "Burial sword box." Shan Qiu nodded, "This sword box contains the murderous aura, anger, resentment, evil aura, and death aura of hundreds of millions of ferocious spirits. Once this thing is used, it will become a purgatory of hell on earth." Speaking up to this point, he looked at Yi Xian. "If it weren't for the fact that you have already reached the breaking mortal realm and that your bloodline itself is the main culprit, I would never recommend this item to you." Shan Ling suddenly said, "Brother Yi is very suitable for this item." Shan Qiu nodded, "Your swordsmanship is extraordinary. Moreover, your bloodline is the main murderous aura and you have killed many people. This item is the most suitable for you. However, you must be careful. The murderous aura is not simple." Yi Xian was curious, "Uncle, how did the elder forge this sword box? Did he really kill millions of living beings?" Shan Qiu shook his head and smiled, "Of course not. In order to collect the murderous aura, the elder spent hundreds of years." Yi Xian was shocked, "Hundreds of years?" Hill nodded. Every legendary level god item is extremely difficult to forge, especially those perfect level legendary god items. Yi Xian said softly, "This is the blood of the Earth Spirit clan." Shan Qiu smiled, "Yes." He then looked at the pillar of light, "Try this item." He then chanted an incantation. Soon, the pillar of light disappeared and the burial sword box appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and asked, "Uncle, was the elder who forged this item a swordsman?" Shan Qiu shook his head. "No. However, he loved swords and spent his entire life studying them. There are still 12 ominous swords in the burial sword case. You can make them acknowledge you as their master now and then try." "No, you can't try it here. If you try it here, we won't be able to withstand the evil spirit qi." Yi Xian nodded. With a point of his finger, a drop of blood entered the sword sheath. As soon as the drop of blood entered the sword sheath turned into a sword light and entered the space between his eyebrows. Boom! In an instant, a dark red aura suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. Shan Qiu's expression instantly changed when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly pulled Shan Ling back. At the same time, he withdrew an ancient black shield and placed it in front of him. In the distance, Yi Xian's eyes were closed, and his body was trembling slightly. Shan Ling was a little worried. "Dad, will Brother Yi be alright?" Shan Qiu shook his head. "He possesses the insanity demon bloodline, and it's extremely extraordinary. The evil spirit qi won't be able to affect him." At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly raised his right hand and pressed it down slowly. Gradually, the blood-red breath around him disappeared. Yi Xian was slightly shocked. The evil spirit qi was quite terrifying indeed. At that moment, he'd almost been unable to control his emotions. Moreover, the evil spirit qi hadn't targeted him. If it had targeted him, then even he wasn't fully confident in his ability to resist it. If this thing was used in conjunction with the insanity demon energy, then it would simply be like adding wings to a tiger. Of course, he might really never wake up. Yi Xian opened his palm and was about to test the burial sword case. Right at this moment, Shan Qiu hurriedly said, "You can't use it here." Yi Xian looked at Shan Qiu. Shan Qiu said in a deep voice, "Once this item is unleashed, this place will immediately turn into an azura field of purgatory." This chapter isn't over, please continue to the next page. All godly objects have their own consciousness. If they feel offended, they'll attack you. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. All right. He realized that these godly objects weren't simple. If they were to attack him at the same time, he might not be able to withstand it. Shan Qiu smiled. Let's go to the next level. Yi Xian was a little curious. Uncle, how many levels does this land spirit's treasure have? Shan Qiu replied, a total of 5 levels. The further we go, the better the treasures. Yi Xian nodded. He was looking forward to it even more. Very quickly, the 3 of them arrived at the 3rd level. In the 3rd level, there were only over 30 dark golden light pillars. Another half was gone. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He turned to look at a light pillar on his right. In that light pillar, there was a long spear. The body of the spear was completely dark, but the tip of the spear was as red as blood. Yi Xian walked to the front of the light pillar. Shan Qiu suddenly said, "This spear is called Ling Tian." The body of the spear is made of celestial star metal. It contains an endless amount of celestial star energy. If you stand in the galaxy, this spear can gather the qi and power of the galaxy and universe. The tip of this spear is made of the power of the Earth's lava. If you stand on the ground, you can gather the power of the earth and the lava deep in the ground. If a spear master uses this spear and stands on the ground, his combat power will increase by at least 50%. If he stands in the galaxy, his combat power will increase by at least 60% to 70%. Yi Xian immediately said, "Uncle, I want this." Shan Qiu glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Are you taking it for a woman?" Yi Xian smiled. "Yes." At the side, Shan Ling suddenly smiled mischievously. "Brother Yi, how many women do you have?" Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. "Not many, just a dozen." "A dozen?" Shan Qiu's expression froze. Shan Ling gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. "Awesome." Yi Xian laughed. He looked at Shan Qiu and said, "Uncle, thank you." Shan Qiu nodded. He silently chanted an incantation. Soon, the light pillar disappeared, and the spear flew to Yi Xian. Yi Xian grasped the long spear. The moment he held the spear, he felt an extremely powerful force. What a good spear! Yi Xian sized up the spear. It was the most suitable spear for Enlanxiu. Shan Qiu smiled. "There's something here that's perfect for you. Come with me." As he spoke, he led Yi Xian to the right. The 3 of them walked to a corner. There was a light pillar there, but there was nothing in it. Yi Xian turned to look at Shan Qiu. Shan Qiu smiled. "Feel it." Yi Xian nodded. His divine sense enveloped the light pillar. However, he still could not feel anything. A hint of surprise flashed across Yi Xian's eyes. "Uncle, this is?" Shan Qiu smiled. "Invisible armor." Yi Xian was curious. "Invisible armor?" Shan Qiu nodded. "It can make you invisible and hide your aura. Of course, it's not just simple invisibility. Don't underestimate this armor. Although it's not big, it contains hundreds of millions of runes. These runes are different, but they're closely related. If you activate it, the hundreds of millions of runes will circulate on their own. It will produce a very special and mysterious power. This power can allow you to escape from the universe and enter a very mysterious state. In other words, after escaping from the universe, you'll enter a new world. Yi Xian frowned. Escape from the universe? A new world? Shan Qiu nodded. A very mysterious state. It's in the universe, but not in the universe. That blacksmith once wanted to study that kind of world. If he could, this treasure would most likely surpass the legendary grade. Unfortunately, he died before he could study it. Yi Xian was speechless. Shan Qiu, this chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Looking at the light pillar, he sighed. What a pity. If he could study that mysterious world, this invisible armor would definitely surpass the legendary grade. As he spoke, he silently chanted an incantation. Soon, the light pillar disappeared. Yi Xian quickly pointed with his finger. A drop of blood flew out. The next moment, Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled. Soon, he realized that there was a mysterious thing in his body. Invisible armor. With a thought, Yi Xian disappeared from where he was. The moment he disappeared, outside the hall, the left and right elders frowned at the same time. The two of them looked at each other. The right elder said in a deep voice, Shan Qiu actually gave that to him too. The left elder smiled. It's all right. The right elder glanced at the left elder. You're so generous. The left elder said calmly, Old Yu, his father saved the Earth Spirit clan back then. However, he didn't want a single divine item. Not only that, he even left a wisp of sword chi in the Earth Spirit clan. That made the beast men dare not invade us for nearly 40,000 years. As he spoke, he looked at the right elder. Even if we give that god of war armor to him, he won't even look at it. Do you understand what I mean? The right elder said in a deep voice, I understand what you mean. Even if we want to curry favor with such a powerful person, we don't have the right and ability. Because in his eyes, all the treasures of the Earth Spirit clan are no different from *T. The left elder nodded. The reason why he helped the Earth Spirit clan back then was not because of our treasures, but because of Shan Qiu. As he spoke, he sighed in his heart. Shan Qiu was not qualified to be the clan leader because his forging skills were really mediocre in the Earth Spirit clan. However, when the Earth Spirit clan was in danger of being exterminated, he brought someone with him. It was the man in green. Nobody knew how Shan Qiu became friends with the man in green. They only knew that they called each other brothers. Because of this relationship, the Earth Spirit clan would know who to appoint as the clan leader even if they had toes. At that moment, the left elder said, that senior's rank is too high. We can't befriend him. However, his son is different. He brought his son to the Earth Spirit clan. Obviously, he hopes that we can take care of him. In this situation, if we take care of this little guy, isn't it the same as befriending him? Moreover, this little guy is extremely talented. He might become a powerful person like his father in the future. Since we're generous to him today, he'll definitely be generous to us in the future. The right elder nodded. I'm not reluctant to. Sigh, forget it. As long as he doesn't take the god of war armor. The left elder nodded. In the Earth Spirit treasure vault. At that moment, Yi Xian had entered a strange world. This world was very strange because he felt that he was no longer in the universe. However, he could not tell where he was. At that moment, Yi Xian was extremely shocked. This was because he realized that everything in front of him was transparent. There were no obstacles in front of him. Everything was exposed to him. Right now, it was like he was in the perspective of a god. In front of him, everything in front of him was transparent. Yi Xian looked up. At the end of the horizon, he saw some light sources. They did not belong to the universe outside. Just as Yi Xian was about to investigate, Xiao Ta's voice was suddenly heard. "Young master, you must not leave this place. P.S. Let me tell you a piece of good news, The Only Sword has published a comic. You can download the Read Comics app and search for The Only Sword to see it. Qing has also been drawn." End of this chapter. Chapter 1602. Hearing Xiao Ta's words, Yi Xian was confused. "Why?" Xiao Ta said in a low voice, "Young master, it's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous." Yi Xian was confused. "Why?" Xiao Ta said in a low voice, "Young master, I don't know either. I only know that there are some very special existences around. They haven't discovered you yet, but if you move, they will be able to discover you." Yi Xian asked in a low voice, "Are they very strong?" Xiao Ta hesitated for a while, then said, "Very strong. It's definitely not something that you can fight against right now." Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then asked, "If my father is here, will he be in danger?" Xiao Ta immediately said, "No. Also, master seems to have been here before." Yi Xian was confused, "Then why don't you know this place?" Xiao Ta smiled, "I went to play with Xiao Bai and the others. I didn't come with master." Yi Xian was speechless. Tiny Pagoda continued, "Young lord, you must not take any risks. Even though I'm not very good at fighting, I know which places are dangerous. This place is extremely, extremely dangerous, and its degree of danger is even above that calamity." Yi Xian looked up, and in that unknown area, there were some white dots of light. Of course, what he saw from here was a white dot of light, but if he walked closer, it would definitely not be a dot, but a huge circle. Because those white dots were very, very far away from him. Yi Xian did not choose to take the risk. Although he had reached the mortal-breaking realm, he had not reached the level where he could do whatever he wanted. Yi Xian returned to reality with a thought. Seeing Yi Xian appear, Mountain Qiu immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly said, "My dear nephew, you must be careful. The blacksmith who made this armor left a message. You must never give this armor to anyone." At this time, Shan Ling suddenly said, "Then father, why did you give this to brother Yi?" Shan Qiu stared at Shan Ling, "Because your brother Yi is one of us." Yi Xian's heart warmed when he heard that. Shan Ling giggled. She glanced at Yi Xian and said nothing. Shan Qiu looked at Yi Xian and said seriously, "Nephew, the blacksmith said that the mysterious world is very special. If you enter it, you must not wander around, because it might not be a world that belongs to us." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand. Don't worry, uncle. I won't mess around." Shan Qiu nodded. "That's good." As he spoke, he looked around and said with a smile, "Nephew, now that you have 5 divine items, there are still 5 more. What type do you want?" Yi Xian thought for a moment before he said, "I'm running for my life." Based on his many years of experience, he felt that it was more important to have a few more pieces of life-saving equipment. He was running for his life. Shan Qiu laughed. "Just nice." As he spoke, he brought Yi Xian to a dark golden pillar of light. Within the pillar of light was a pair of boots. Yi Xian was instantly interested. "Uncle, can I run very fast if I wear this?" Shan Qiu nodded. "Very, very fast. This pair of boots is called the Spacetime Boots. It can travel through space at will. Its speed is indescribable." "Indescribable." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Let me try." Shan Qiu smiled. "All right." As he spoke, he silently chanted an incantation. Soon, the pillar of light split open and the pair of spacetime boots appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly dripped his blood to make it recognize him as its owner. Soon, a brand new pair of boots appeared on Yi Xian's feet. Yi Xian moved his mind. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in a mountain range tens of thousands of miles away. Yi Xian was stunned. At that moment, he was really stunned. With just a thought, he actually floated tens of thousands of miles away. As if he had thought of something, he looked up. The next moment, he was already in a starry sky. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was extremely excited. If this thing was used to escape, it would be a magical item. The next moment, Yi Xian was already back in the Earth Spirit's treasury. Yi Xian said excitedly, "Uncle, this item seems to consume very little spiritual energy." He had used it a few times just now and it only consumed a little spiritual energy. This was a little unbelievable to him. Shanqiu smiled. "That's normal. Because this is a perfect grade legendary item." What is perfect grade? It means that it has no flaws. In fact, there are some treasures outside that can also achieve this effect. However, the consumption is too high. With your current strength, you can only use it 5 or 6 times at most before the celestial qi in your body is depleted. However, this item is different. The consumption of celestial qi is almost negligible. In order to achieve this blacksmith spent at least 600 years researching and improving it. 600 years. Yi Xian looked around. Every item here was a master's life's work. In fact, he was a little impressed by these masters. It was very difficult for them to spend so much time and effort on one thing. Shanqiu said again, "Actually, under normal circumstances, these legendary items can't leave this place because their research value is too high. They are also the symbol of the Earth Spirit tribe. Not to mention outsiders, even the people of the Earth Spirit tribe can only come in and choose one if they have made a great contribution." Yi Xian smiled. "I'm dragging down my father's fortune." Shanqiu smiled. "Indeed. He and I are brothers. If it were up to me, I would be willing to give you the divine war armor. However, I have no choice. There are many things that I can't decide on my own." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand. Uncle has taken good care of me." "Oh right. Uncle, how did you become brothers with my father?" Shanqiu looked at Shanqiu, his eyes filled with curiosity. In fact, the entire Earth Spirit tribe was curious. This was because Shanqiu was a spoiled brat. He was not strong enough and his forging skills were not good. No one understood how he could become brothers with such a powerful person. Shanqiu laughed. I can't tell you. I'm going to tell you. Your father will definitely mess with me in the future, haha. Yi Xian was speechless. Needless to say, these two definitely did not get to know each other because of something good. Shanqiu smiled. Choose one more, then go to the lower level and choose 3 more. Choose one. Yi Xian looked around. Very quickly, his gaze fell on one of the items. Yi Xian quickly walked to the pillar of light. Within the pillar of light, there was a small knife. A flying knife. Shanqiu smiled. You have a good eye. This flying knife is called God Slayer. It's 3 inches and 7 fen long and weighs 4 to 200 grams. Although it's light, its material is not simple. It's made from the world's rarest God stone of time and space source stone. It contains an endless amount of God's power of time. The wielder of the knife will be strengthened by the power of time. Most terrifyingly, this knife is one with the space. When it's used, it's unpredictable and terrifying. Yi Xian smiled. I want this flying knife. Shanqiu nodded. All right. Very quickly, Yi Xian obtained the flying knife. It was very light. Yi Xian did not drip his blood on it to bind it. Instead, he kept it. Shan Qiu said, let's go to the next level. Yi Xian nodded. He already had 7 treasures. He was still looking forward to the treasures on the next level. Very quickly, the 3 of them arrived at the 4th level. There were only 10 orange pillars of light on the 4th level. Shan Qiu smiled. The 10 legendary items are the trademark of the Earth Spirit tribe. Any one of them is enough to shake the entire universe. Yi Xian looked at the pillar of light closest to him on the right. Inside the pillar of light was a crystal ball. The crystal ball was slowly spinning. Shan Qiu smiled. The universal instrument. This ball can be said to be a map of the universe. All the known starfields and mysterious worlds in the universe are marked on it. Some unknown forbidden areas are marked on it. It can be said that this ball is equivalent to a miniaturized version of the universe. Most importantly, this ball has a teleportation function. For example, if you want to return to the 9 dimensions, all you need to do is say the word and the teleportation portal will be activated. You can use a certain amount of Xian Qi to teleport through space. Of course. Yi Xian suddenly said, I want it. Shan Qiu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said seriously, I want it. Although this thing couldn't be used for defense or attack, its functionality was simply too terrifying. A miniaturized version of the universe. With this thing, the entire universe became smaller. Shan Qiu smiled. I know you definitely want it. However, you have to listen to me first. This thing has a weakness. If the teleportation is too far away, it will consume a lot of Xian Qi. If the owner does not have Xian Qi to consume, and the teleportation portal is in the teleportation phase, it is very likely that the space will be distorted. In other words, the teleportation will be random. Other than that, the physical body of the user must be strong enough. This is because during the teleportation process, the speed will be very, very fast. An ordinary person's physical body will not be able to withstand that kind of power. Yi Xian nodded. These problems are not considered big problems. Shan Qiu smiled. Indeed. As he spoke, he looked at the universal instrument and said softly, that blacksmith spent almost 2,000 years to forge this thing. It was really a lifetime of hard work. As he finished speaking, he silently chanted an incantation. The pillar of light split open and the universal instrument flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian immediately dripped his blood to make it recognize its owner. After the universal instrument entered the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows, Yi Xian immediately felt it. With a thought, the universal instrument appeared in his hands. In his mind, a starry sky appeared. This starry sky was like a net. There were countless universe coordinates on it. Each coordinate had a detailed description. Very quickly, he found the 9-dimensional universe. Good stuff. Yi Xian kept the universal instrument and looked at Shan Qiu. He smiled. Uncle, let's look at the next one. Shan Qiu smiled. All right. The 3 of them came in front of the second pillar of light. In the second pillar of light, there was a ring. The ring was dark gold in color. From its appearance, it looked a little ordinary. Yi Xian was a little curious. This is? Shan Qiu smiled. Divine ring. Yi Xian blinked. Divine ring? Shan Qiu nodded. Divine ring. Yi Xian hurriedly asked. What's its use? Shan Qiu smiled. It can mobilize all the elemental power in the world for its own use. Not only that, it also contains an elemental shield. It can block all elemental power. Yi Xian suddenly asked, does the disaster blood lightning belong to the elemental power? Shan Qiu shook his head. It doesn't. That thing belongs to the supreme law. This ring can't block it. Of course, it can if it's just a simple disaster. However, if it's the disaster law itself that descends to cast the disaster, nothing can block it. Yi Xian thought for a while. Then, he said, I'll take it. Shan Qiu smiled. Sure. As he spoke, he began to silently recite an incantation. Yi Xian looked behind him. There were still 8 more pillars of light. He was sure that he couldn't reject the god item in each pillar of light. It seemed like he had to think of a way to get 2 more. However, wouldn't that make him seem a little shameless? Thinking of this, Yi Xian lightly slapped his face. Damn it, what do I want this thing for? I don't want my face anymore. Chapter 1603. Soon, Yi Xian obtained the divine ring. The 3 of them walked towards the 3rd pillar of light. In the 3rd pillar of light, there was a black ruler. On the surface of the black ruler, there were 2 small words, Word of Truth. Word of Truth. Yi Xian sized it up and then looked at Shan Qiu. Shan Qiu smiled and said, the ruler of truth is 3 feet long. It is made of the most ancient dark iron essence. It contains 7 mantras. Each mantra is a truth, and each truth is a law. He then looked at Yi Xian and said, this item is mysterious, but it doesn't suit you. Yi Xian was confused and asked, why? Shan Qiu smiled and said, because this ruler can only be used by a great scholar. The power of this ruler is not in its strength, but in its words. 1 word can decide life and death. Of course, this word must be reasonable. I feel that you are not a reasonable person. So, you can't use this ruler to its fullest. Most importantly, if you are unreasonable, this ruler will be useless. Moreover, if the other party is reasonable, your state of mind might be affected by this ruler. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Shan Ling suddenly smiled and said, this was made by Grandpa Di Yan, right? Shan Qiu nodded. Shan Ling smiled and said, no wonder. Yi Xian was curious and asked, is Senior Di Yan still around? Shan Qiu shook his head and said, he left 1,000 years ago. However, he is a respected person in our Earth Spirit clan because he is the most knowledgeable person in our Earth Spirit clan. He knows hundreds of languages and understands the culture of close to 100 races. He left behind countless literary works that have influenced countless people in our Earth Spirit clan. Actually, apart from being a scholar, he can be ranked in the top 5 in the history of the Earth Spirit tribe in terms of one-on-one combat strength. You should know that he killed a transcending mortality realm expert from the Beastmen tribe with words. Killed with words. Yi Xian was embarrassed. This is the real all-mouthy king. Shan Qiu looked at the ruler of truth and said, let's look at the next one. Yi Xian nodded. He glanced at the ruler of truth. Although it was powerful, it was not suitable for him. Although he usually liked to be mischievous, he was not a reasonable person, unless he really couldn't win. If they could beat him, who would reason with him? And among the women he liked, there didn't seem to be anyone suitable. The 3 of them arrived at the 4th pillar of light. Within the 4th pillar of light was an eye. The surface of the eye was as smooth as a mirror, and its interior was as deep as the vast starry sky. It was as if one would be sucked in just by looking at it. Yi Xian was a little curious. This is? Shan Qiu smiled, Heaven's Eye. With this eye, it can magnify your divine sense by at least 100 times, allowing you to see the heavens with a single glance. Most importantly, this eye can see through all illusions. Apart from that invisibility armor of yours, this eye can see through all illusions and concealment techniques. With this eye, you'll be in a safe state at all times, because any experts that want to get close to you will be discovered by you in advance. Other than that, this eye also has the ability to see through everything. X-ray vision. Yi Xian blinked. At this moment, Shan Qiu smiled, are you interested? Yi Xian nodded. This was a good thing. Just as he was about to accept the Heaven's Eye, Shan Qiu suddenly said, there are some better ones at the back, do you want to take a look? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, let's take a look. Actually, he really wanted the Heaven's Eye. Of course, the reason he wanted it was not because it could see through things. He, Yi Xian, was not that kind of person. He wanted the Heaven's Eye because it could see through concealment techniques. In that case, he would not be afraid of assassins. However, he could only ask for one more item now, so he did not want to make a decision so quickly. Perhaps there were better ones at the back. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Shan Qiu laughed, then said, come. Let me take a look at the back first. With that, he brought Yi Xian and Shan Ling to the fifth pillar of light. There was a dagger in the pillar of light. Shan Qiu did not explain, but looked at Yi Xian. This dagger is not bad, are you interested? Yi Xian looked at the dagger and shook his head. He did not use a dagger, and among the women he liked, there was no one who used a dagger. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Uncle, do you have any armor-like treasures? He suddenly realized that he seemed to be missing a defensive-type divine item. Although his physical body was very strong now, he still wanted a defensive-type treasure. Armor. Just as Shan Qiu was about to speak, Shan Ling suddenly said, God of Combat Armor. God of Combat Armor is very good. God of Combat Armor. Hearing this, there was a slight change in Shan Qiu's expression, but he did not speak anymore. Shan Ling blinked, why don't we go to the next level to take a look? Yi Xian looked at Shan Qiu. Shan Qiu was in a dilemma. Yi Xian smiled and said, you don't need the divine warlord armor. Any defensive treasure will do. Something like that Magus armor shield will do. Shan Ling suddenly said, Dad, Brother Yi doesn't want it, he's just going to take a look. You're not that stingy, are you? Yi Xian looked at Shan Ling. Needless to say, this little girl's main goal was the God of Combat Armor. Along the way, he realized that this little girl was not interested in the treasures around her at all, except for the invisible armor. Shan Qiu glared at Shan Ling, you're the one who wants to see the God of Combat Armor, right? Shan Ling giggled, Dad, let's go take a look. Shan Qiu looked at Yi Xian and sighed, little fella, I can take a look, but I really can't give it to you. I don't have the right to. If I had the right, I would give it to you directly. Yi Xian smiled, I understand. Uncle, I want to see it too. Of course, I won't be greedy. Shan Qiu nodded slightly, then let's go take a look. As he spoke, he walked in front of a stone wall and chanted a spell. Gradually, the stone wall began to tremble. Yi Xian looked at Shan Ling, who was full of anticipation. You really want to see the God of Combat Armor? Shan Ling nodded vigorously, that's the Earth Spirit Clan's entire clan's effort to forge this armor. The complexity of it is unimaginable. If only I could take it and study it. TSK TSK. Shan Qiu suddenly said, in your dreams. Shan Ling pursed her lips, these treasures should be left for our clansmen to study. That way, we can better help our clansmen improve their forging skills. As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian, isn't that right, Brother Yi? Yi Xian was speechless. This little girl, she had a lot of tricks up her sleeves. Shan Qiu glared at Shan Ling. Shan Ling giggled, all right, Dad, hurry up and open the door. Shan Qiu felt helpless. He quickly chanted a spell and soon, the stone wall in front of the three of them cracked open. As soon as the stone wall opened, an old man appeared in front of the three of them. The old man wore a black robe and had white hair. He looked extremely old, but his eyes were extremely sharp. Seeing the old man, Shan Qiu bowed slightly, Elder Ming. This Elder Ming's seniority was even higher than the left elder and the right elder. Elder Ming glanced at Shan Qiu, then looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian also bowed slightly. Greetings, Elder Ming. Elder Ming looked at Yi Xian. Who are you? Shan Qiu hurriedly said, he's the guardian's son. Guardian god. Hearing this, Elder Ming was slightly stunned. Soon, the coldness in his eyes gradually softened. He glanced at Yi Xian and nodded, you're young and promising. Yi Xian bowed slightly, Elder, you're too kind. Elder Ming said, you want to take a look at the God of War armor? Yi Xian nodded, I want to take a look. It's fine if it's inconvenient. Shan Qiu looked at Elder Ming. Elder Ming fell silent for a long time before he said, there's nothing inconvenient about it. Come in. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Shan Ling gave Yi Xian a thumbs up, Big Brother Yi, you have a great reputation. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He knew that it wasn't his reputation that was great, it was his father's reputation. At the entrance to the treasure vault, the left and right elder exchanged glances. The right elder hesitated for a moment before he said, I have a bad feeling about this. The left elder smiled, don't worry. That little fellow is just going to take a look. There won't be any problems. Moreover, he isn't a greedy person. So, we don't have to worry. The right elder nodded slightly, I hope so. Yi Xian and the other two followed Elder Ming forward. The last level wasn't as simple as the outside. They arrived at a passageway, and there were all sorts of strange runes on both sides of the passageway. Shan Qiu smiled, these are all formations. If an outsider were to forcefully enter this place, over 10 million formations would be activated at the same time. It can be said that even a transcending mortality stage powerhouse would be crushed into pieces. Yi Xian felt slightly awkward when he heard this. Am I not at the transcending mortality stage? Shan Qiu suddenly roared with laughter, don't think too much about it. I'm not talking about you. Yi Xian was speechless. Shan Ling suddenly said, Grandpa Ming, how long has it been since someone came here? Elder Ming said, over 1,000 years. Yi Xian was speechless. Over 1,000 years. This senior is really good at enduring loneliness. Shan Ling blinked, Grandpa Ming, aren't you bored here? Why don't I stand guard for you? Yi Xian was speechless. Shan Qiu glared at Shan Ling, what are you trying to do? Shan Ling giggled, I'll stand guard for Grandpa Ming. Then, Grandpa Ming can go out and play. Shan Qiu shook his head. You little girl. Elder Ming glanced at Shan Ling with a hint of a smile in his eyes. Soon, the three of them walked into a secret chamber. As soon as they entered the secret chamber, before anyone could react, a 7-colored light pillar exploded in front of them. The next moment, a ray of red light directly entered the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! Yi Xian's entire body froze on the spot. Everyone was dumbfounded. At this moment, the left and right elders also entered the secret chamber. When they saw the shattered light pillar on the ground, both of them were also dumbfounded. Soon, everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was also dumbfounded. What the hell just came in? Soon, he found out what it was. It must be the God of War armor. The God of War armor actually ran into his body. Elder Ming and the rest looked at Yi Xian. Their expressions were no longer gentle, they were a little cold. Yi Xian looked at everyone, I don't know what's going on. Elder Ming said in a low voice, can you make it come out? Yi Xian said, let me try. He tried to contact the God of War armor, but he could not. It did not care about him at all. Yi Xian shook his head. Everyone's expression became even colder. Yi Xian was about to speak when a voice rang in his head, I want freedom. If you take me away, I will recognize you as my master. Yi Xian, the place suddenly became quiet and the atmosphere was a little tense. Elder Ming and the rest looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, "Are you coming out or not?" No response. Yi Xian suddenly took out a sword and pointed it at his stomach. He said angrily, "Are you coming out or not?" Everyone, there was still no response. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, "The Earth Spirit tribe has treated me so well. How can I take their divine item? You forced your way into my body. It's unjust. I've let the Earth Spirit tribe down. I'll die with you today." As he spoke, he was about to stab Yi Xian. Next to him, Shan Qiu hurriedly stopped him. He turned to look at Elder Ming and the others and said angrily, Are you really going to force him to his death?" Elder Ming and the rest were confused. They did not do anything. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Uncle, don't stop me. Let me stab him to death." As he spoke, he was about to stab his sword down again. Shan Qiu quickly stopped him again. He held onto Yi Xian's hand tightly and said in a trembling voice, "Nephew. Don't do anything stupid. Your father saved the Earth Spirit tribe. If you die here today, it's the same as implicating the Earth Spirit tribe." Yi Xian said angrily, "The Earth Spirit tribe has treated me so well. How can I take your clan's divine item? If it doesn't come out today, I'll die with it." As he spoke, he suddenly stabbed his sword down. Although it was stopped, the sword still stabbed a few inches in. Seeing this, Elder Ming and the rest's expressions changed. Elder Ming said in a trembling voice, "Young man, don't do anything rash. It's just an external object. It won't come out for now. We can take our time. Don't hurt yourself." Elder Zhua also quickly said, Yes. It's just an external object. You don't do anything stupid." Elder Yu hesitated for a while and also said, Don't do anything stupid." However, Yi Xian ignored everyone's advice and continued to stab himself. Moreover, the sword stabbed deeper and deeper. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. If Shan Qiu had not held onto Yi Xian's hand tightly, Yi Xian would have died. Seeing this scene, Elder Ming and the others really panicked. If they were to force the son of the guardian deity to die here, it would be too unjust and unjust. Elders like them would be ridiculed by the entire Earth Spirit clan. The guardian. Back then, he had saved the entire Earth Spirit tribe with his own strength. Now, they had forced his son to die, not to mention the others, even they themselves felt that this was too much. Seeing that Yi Xian did not care and wanted to stab himself, Elder Ming quickly said, "Young man, don't do anything rash. We were going to give you the God of War armor anyway, everyone. P.S. I look at the donations and votes every day." Then, I realized that many people did not speak at all. Many readers only had records of voting and donating. They did not even have any records of speaking at all. Don't you guys complain when you read books? I read all the comments, really. A reader said that I'm the king of updates. I write at least 7 to 8 chapters a day. I'm embarrassed to say that. Shan Qiu glanced at Yi Xian with displeasure. "Didn't we say that we're a family? Don't speak like an outsider again." Elder Ming nodded, "Indeed." Yi Xian nodded slightly. Yi Xian, will definitely not refuse if the Earth Spirit clan needs anything in the future. This is my second home. A trace of a smile appeared on the faces of Shan Qiu and the others when they heard this. Meanwhile, Elder Ming suddenly said, "Shan Qiu, take this little fellow with you. Help him subdue the war god armor." Shan Qiu glanced at Elder Ming and nodded, "All right." Yi Xian bowed slightly to Elder Ming and the others, and then he turned around and left with Shan Qiu. The secret room suddenly fell into silence after Yi Xian and the other two had left. After a long time, Elder Zhua said, "What do you think?" Elder Ming closed his eyes slowly. "This little fellow isn't behind this. It's the war god armor's own will." Elder Zhua nodded, "Just as I guessed." Elder Ming said softly, "This armor is unlike other divine artifacts. It wouldn't be willing to be trapped here." Elder Yu sighed softly, "We've suffered a huge loss this time." Elder Zhua smiled, "No loss." Elder Yu looked at Elder Zhua, and Elder Zhua smiled, "Didn't we get an extraordinarily monstrous genius?" Elder Ming nodded, "Our Earth Spirit clan is mostly only interested in forging techniques. Therefore, our strength is much weaker than the other clans. If we don't have powerful external help, it'll be very difficult for our Earth Spirit clan to survive freely." Elder Yu spoke abruptly, "Since they're all giving us treasures, then we can totally choose the Cosmos Court." Elder Ming glanced at Elder Yu, "Going to the Cosmos Court is like being a slave. What's the Guardian God's attitude towards our Earth Spirit clan? The reason he helped the Earth Spirit clan all those years ago and protected us with his sword energy wasn't because we have treasures, but because he's Shan Qiu's brother. The Guardian God never wanted to enslave our Earth Spirit clan. Can the Cosmos Court do that?" Elder Yu hesitated for a moment and said, "The Guardian God doesn't care about the treasures of our Earth Spirit clan, but his son." Elder Yu spoke abruptly, "Brother Yu, I know you can't bear to do that." "I can't bear to do that. 10 divine artifacts and an ultimate divine artifact. My heart is bleeding as well. However, have you thought about something? What if Shan Qiu isn't here one day?" Elder Yu's expression instantly changed when he heard this. The reason the green-clothed man helped the Earth Spirit clan was because of Shan Qiu. If Shan Qiu was gone, would the Earth Spirit clan be able to ask the green-clothed man for help? It would probably be very difficult. Elder Yu said, "Actually, we can't look at this completely from the perspective of benefits. The green-clothed man didn't save our Earth Spirit clan all those years ago because of his relationship with us. Since that's the case, why should we turn this relationship into a relationship of benefits? The Guardian God helped us because of his relationship with us. There's no need for us to turn it into a relationship of benefits when we help this little fellow. Shan Qiu treats him as his nephew, so he's an Earth Spirit clan member." Elder Ming nodded, "That's right. Even though the combat god's armor is precious, can it be more important than the inheritance of our Earth Spirit clan?" As he spoke, he gazed at Elder Yu, "Remember, we can't be ungrateful. The Guardian God's kindness to our Earth Spirit clan can't be measured by a single combat god's armor. Also, have you ever thought of a question? Why did the patron god bring his son to us? It's because he treats us as his own. Otherwise, with his strength, would he really need our Earth Spirit clan to take care of this little fellow?" Elder Yu nodded, "I understand." Elder Ming nodded, "Go take a look at that little fellow. It's probably quite difficult for him to subdue the combat god's armor now. Besides that, do whatever you can to help. We've already given away the combat god's armor. Don't be stingy with other things." Elder Zhua smiled, "Understood." Soon, both of them left. Elder Ming glanced at the surroundings and shook his head with a smile, "I'm free." As soon as he finished speaking, he left the secret chamber. In one of the houses, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground while Shan Qiu and Mountain Spirit stood before him. Shan Qiu spoke in a deep voice, "Can you sense it?" Yi Xian shook his head. He realized that the combat god's armor was actually pretending to be dead. It seemed like this fellow didn't want to submit to him. Shan Qiu's expression turned grim when he saw Yi Xian shaking his head. He looked at Yi Xian's abdomen. "If you're willing to submit to my nephew, the Earth Spirit clan will let you regain your freedom. Otherwise, don't blame us for not holding back." The Earth Spirit clan had created it, so they naturally had a way to deal with it. There was still no reaction. Shan Xiu frowned. Just as he was about to speak, a voice resounded, I mean what I say. As he spoke, Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled. Yi Xian's expression changed instantly. He felt as if his body was being torn apart layer by layer. Shan Xiu quickly said, it's going to merge with the body and soul. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. At the same time, there was also the soul-suppressing sword. The two gods' weapons protected Yi Xian's soul. Yi Xian's expression became ferocious. He felt as if his entire body was being torn apart. At the side, Shan Xiu spoke in a deep voice, little fellow, you have to hold on. Yi Xian said ferociously, come on. I can hold on. Boom. A mysterious aura suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. Shan Xiu and Mountain Spirit quickly retreated. Shan Xiu blinked his eyes, Father, what's this? Who would be able to kill him if he wore this thing? Shan Xiu suddenly said, this god of war armor is the most perfect armor. It's impeccable in terms of defense and other aspects. It can be said that once you wear this armor, it'll be hard for you to die. It'll be hard for you to die. Shan Xiu's words were filled with pride and confidence. This armor was forged by the Shan Xiu tribe with all their resources. Of course he was proud and confident. Yi Xian glanced at the armor he was wearing and could not help but grin. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. That's right. I have 10 legendary artifacts and a legendary god of war armor. I'm also at the mortal realm. Do I need to be afraid of the Cosmos Court? Of course I don't. Fight the Cosmos Court. I'll do it. He looked at Shan Xiu and said, Uncle, I might have to leave. I'll come back to the Earth Spirit Tribe after I'm done with some matters. Shan Xiu hesitated for a while and passed a storage ring to Yi Xian. There are some godly items inside. Although they are not as good as the ones in the Earth Spirit Treasury, they are still of high quality. Yi Xian did not reject it and kept the storage ring. There were some treasures in the storage ring. Just like what Shan Xiu said, although they were not as good as the ones in the Earth Spirit Treasury, they were still of high quality. There were not many of them, but more than 1,000 of them. Obviously, these were not given to him by Shan Xiu, but by the Earth Spirit Tribe. Yi Xian bowed slightly. Thank you, uncle. Shan Xiu smiled. No need to thank me. If I see my father next time, I must invite him here for a gathering. Yi Xian smiled. Definitely. If he doesn't come, I'll drag him here even if I have to. Shan Xiu laughed. All right. After Yi Xian said goodbye to Shan Xiu, he went to the galaxy. In the galaxy, Yi Xian took out the universal apparatus and searched. Soon, he found the location of the Cosmos Court. Just as Yi Xian was about to teleport, Xiaota suddenly said, Young master, are you going to fight the Cosmos Court? Yi Xian smiled. Yes. Xiaota hesitated for a while and said, Young master, isn't this a little impulsive? Yi Xian waved his hand. Don't be impulsive. Xiaota, think about it. Who can kill me now? Then, he raised his head and looked deep into the galaxy. Now that I'm invincible in the human world, who else can I fight but the Cosmos Court? Then, he was about to activate the teleportation formation. Xiaota quickly said, Young master, do you want to reconsider? Yi Xian laughed. No need to reconsider. From today onwards, there will be no more Cosmos Court in the world. I, Yi Xian, will say it. Then, he activated the teleportation formation. In the next moment, he disappeared. Chapter 1605. Not long after Yi Xian vanished, the space where he stood suddenly split open. In the next moment, a little girl suddenly appeared. It was the nameless little girl from the Cosmos Divine Court. She hadn't teleported here through a teleportation array. Instead, she had torn open a starfield all the way here. The nameless little girl. The front of the little girl's hair was slightly long, and it covered half of her face. In her right hand was a shabby little wooden figurine, and in her left hand was a voice transmission talisman. The little girl suddenly let go of the voice transmission talisman, and Mu Xiaodao's voice came from it. Clearly, Mu Xiaodao's voice transmission to Yi Xian had been intercepted by the little girl. The little girl's expression was calm. The space in front of her suddenly split open. She was about to leave when she seemed to notice something. She suddenly raised her head, and in the next moment, she vanished. When she reappeared, the little girl was already deep in the starry sky. Above her head was a layer of blood-colored clouds, and within the clouds, lightning flickered. Calamity tribulation. The little girl looked at the blood-colored clouds with a cold gaze. And around her body, there were actually some blood-red threads. Calamity karma threads. If Yi Xian was here, he would definitely be extremely shocked. Because the little girl in front of him actually had a calamity constitution. He wasn't the only calamity constitution in the world. At this moment, the blood-colored clouds suddenly condensed a bolt of blood lightning. The blood lightning flew out of the clouds, and its target was the nameless little girl. The little girl suddenly vanished on the spot, and when she reappeared, she was above the blood-colored clouds. Below her, the blood lightning soundlessly shattered into countless fragments, and the blood-colored clouds had also become a pile of fragments. Instant calamity tribulation. At the same time, the karma threads around the little girl vanished. The calamity karma couldn't touch her. At this moment, a phantom appeared above the nameless little girl. The projection of the calamity law. The calamity law looked at the little girl, and the little girl looked back at the calamity law. Neither of them spoke. The little girl's exposed left eye was filled with killing intent. After a long time, the calamity law became illusory. The little girl turned and left. She lowered her head to look at the little wooden figurine in her hand. As she looked at it, a stream of clear liquid suddenly flowed out of her left eye. Yes. No. They lied to me. As she spoke, her gaze gradually became vacant, and her thoughts returned to the past. It was a small village, and within the village, there were corpses and blood everywhere. At the entrance of the village, there was a little girl in a black dress curled up. The little girl was very afraid, and her body continuously trembled as she cried. At this moment, an exclamation of surprise sounded from the side. Disaster constitution? As he spoke, a man appeared in front of the little girl. Beside the man was a little girl in white clothes. The little girl was also holding a small wooden doll in her hand. The man sized up the little girl, and the little girl raised her head to look at the man. The man said softly, "It really is the body of adversity." The little girl looked at the man and the man smiled, "Don't be afraid." The little girl said with a trembling voice, "I killed them. I'm the bad guy, right?" The man shook his head. A person's good or bad isn't determined by their constitution. Although they died because of you, you had no intention of killing them. So, this isn't your fault. If you're wrong, it's your past life's fault, and it's also my fault. There are too many imperfections in the rules and order that I've established, and there are also too many loopholes. As a result, some powerhouses who are unwilling to give up repeatedly look for loopholes to reincarnate, and they even carry their past life's memories. As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand. "Come back with me. I'll protect you in the future." The little girl looked at the man for a long time, and then she stretched out her little hand and placed it in the man's palm. The man smiled slightly. "Let's go." The little girl nodded. Just like that, the man led the two little girls away. At this moment, the man turned to look at the village and said softly, your deaths are truly undeserved disasters. The next life is too long, so I grant you another life." With that, the air above the village suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless soul fragments gathered. Not long after, soul bodies appeared in the air above the village. Soon, these souls entered the corpses below, and before long, the people in the village stood up one by one. The man withdrew his gaze, and then he led the two little girls towards the distance. The little girl in a white dress suddenly tilted her head as she gazed at the man, and she said, "Master, even if they're alive, they'll only be able to live for a few dozen years at most." The man rubbed the little girl's head lightly, and he smiled as he said, "Dao Yi, you're the eldest, so you have to understand that even if they're only able to live for a day, that's their right, and we shouldn't deprive them of that right." The little girl called Dao Yi blinked, "But there's slaughter in many places." The man smiled, "Change it slowly." Dao Yi hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "It's very difficult to change human nature." The man grinned, "Take it slowly." Dao Yi nodded slightly, "All right." Meanwhile, the little girl on the man's right suddenly gazed at the little wooden figure in Dao Yi's hand. "Can I play with it for a while?" Dao Yi blinked, "No." The little girl lowered her head slightly and didn't dare speak another word. The man smiled, "I'll carve one for you when we get back." The little girl gazed at the man, "Really?" The man roared with laughter, and then he rubbed the little girl's head lightly, "Really?" The corners of the little girl's mouth curled up slightly. In next to no time, the three of them vanished into the distance. In the starry sky, the nameless little girl gazed at the little wooden figure in her hand, and tears flowed incessantly from her eyes. After a long time, she gazed into the distance. "Kill him, and they'll tell me where you've gone." As soon as she finished speaking, she casually waved her hand, and the space in the distance split open. Actually, it wasn't the space in front of her that had split open, but the space in tens of thousands of stellar regions had split open. The nameless little girl stepped into the split space, and then she vanished in the blink of an eye. Divine Court Stellar Region. A certain space in the starry sky suddenly split open, and then a man walked out. It was none other than Yi Xian. Yi Xian put away the universal apparatus. He had to admit that this thing was truly abnormal. He'd only used less than an hour to teleport here from the demon domain. It was too fast. It was much faster than the teleportation array built by the Cosmos Divine Court. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly said softly, "Looks like I'll have to make a trip back to Qingcheng when I'm free." With this thing, he'd be able to return to Qingcheng in just 15 minutes. After putting away the universal apparatus, Yi Xian looked around. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, "Who are you?" Yi Xian gazed into the distance, and then said, "How do I get to the Cosmos Divine Court?" The middle-aged man frowned slightly, "You're looking for the Cosmos Divine Court?" Yi Xian nodded, and as if he'd thought of something, he looked at the middle-aged man, "Are you from the Cosmos Divine Court?" The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, "Yes." As he spoke, he seemed to have discovered something, and his brows furrowed slightly. "You're Yi Xian, who's on the wanted list." As he finished speaking, he was about to attack, but at this moment, Yi Xian had already vanished from his original spot. Chi! The middle-aged man's head directly flew off. Heaven Final Realm. This middle-aged man was a peak Heaven Final Realm expert, but he couldn't even take a single sword. In the distance, Yi Xian kept his sword and shook his head, "Too weak." As he finished speaking, he left confidently. Yi Xian walked into the distance, and not long later, an old man appeared in front of him. Just as the old man was about to speak, Yi Xian disappeared from his original spot once more. Chi! Before the old man could react, his forehead was pierced by a sword. Behind the old man, Yi Xian kept his sword and shook his head. "This is the Cosmos Divine Court?" As he finished speaking, he rode on his sword and disappeared into the distance. Actually, he didn't use any external items at all. Even if he didn't use any god items, his sword wasn't something that Heaven Final Realm experts could block. One could say that if they fought normally, even Mu Xiaodao wouldn't be able to beat him. Not long later, Yi Xian saw an island, and on that island, he saw a giant palace. Cosmos Divine Court. Just as Yi Xian was about to walk over, an illusion suddenly appeared in front of him. Just as the illusion was about to speak, Yi Xian raised his sword. Qi! That illusion was directly slashed into pieces. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the shadow that had been chopped into pieces. I'm here to kill people today. Let's cut the crap. As he finished speaking, he suddenly rode on his sword and very soon, he appeared in front of the Cosmos Divine Court's hall. Looking at the Cosmos Divine Court, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and pointed it at the hall. I am Yi Xian. Cosmos Divine Court, is there anyone who dares to fight me? Yi Xian. His voice was like thunder, reverberating through the entire starry sky. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared not far away from Yi Xian. God Official. The God Official glanced at Yi Xian. I really didn't expect you to come here. You've really surprised me. Yi Xian roared with laughter and was about to speak when some mysterious experts appeared in the surroundings. The weakest amongst them was at the mortal realm. Behind the God Official, there were two more experts. One held a saber, the other a sword. Black and white saint emissaries. Besides them, the undying old man was there as well. Moreover, the god undead monarch had appeared not far behind Yi Xian. Ma Yi was there as well. Seventh swordsman, whose body had been shattered by the green-clothed man, was present as well. Moreover, her body had recovered. At this moment, the legendary master Yen Xiaoshao, had appeared as well. Her eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was slightly stunned by the scene before him. Because he noticed that there were over 10 mortal realm experts, and the weakest amongst them was at the peak of the heavenly might realm. There were quite a few at the mortal realm as well. At this moment, Mu Xiaodao suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. What are you doing here? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, I'm here to destroy the Cosmos God Court. Mu Xiaodao blinked. Your brother and father are here too? Yi Xian shook his head. Mu Xiaodao asked again, is the plain-dressed woman here? Yi Xian shook his head again. Mu Xiaodao asked, did you come alone? Yi Xian nodded. Mu Xiaodao immediately gave him a thumbs up. You've got guts. Yi Xian asked softly, is it too late for me to leave now? Mu Xiaodao blinked and smiled mischievously. What do you think? Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, why don't you surrender? The Milky Way galaxy is particular about not killing those who surrender. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. A reader told me that I can stop updating for 5 days and then release 10 chapters at once. This way, I can realize my bragging. Moreover, I can release 10 chapters at once without missing chapters. It's the best of both worlds. I thought about it for a whole night, and I felt that there was nothing wrong with him. I'm going to give him 2 sets of physical books. One was the Sword Domain, and the other was the Supreme One. Chapter 1606. If he surrendered, then he wouldn't be killed. Yi Xian's face darkened. If he surrendered, then he would probably be dismembered. Mu Xiaodao suddenly asked, really came alone? Yi Xian nodded, yes. He came alone. Everyone's expressions instantly became weird when they heard Yi Xian. This fellow came to destroy the Cosmos Court by himself. Everyone thought that they'd heard wrongly. Yi Xian looked at Mu Xiaodao, there are so many people in the Cosmos Court? Mu Xiaodao spoke indifferently, only a portion of them. Some haven't shown themselves and are hiding in the dark. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "What should I do now?" Mu Xiaodao blinked, "What's your objective?" Yi Xian said, "To destroy the Cosmos Court." Mu Xiaodao smiled, "I want to watch you perform." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Mu Xiaodao continued, "Didn't you receive my voice transmission?" Yi Xian was slightly puzzled, "What voice transmission?" Mu Xiaodao pondered deeply for a moment before shaking her head and smiling, "Nothing." As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian, "Since you're here, then let's perform." As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to leave. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Xiaodao, I'll give you something. Do you want it?" "No." Before Mu Xiaodao could speak, Ma Yi suddenly walked to Mu Xiaodao's side. She looked at Yi Xian coldly. "Can you get this straight? We are mortal enemies. Are you trying to instigate us to defect by giving us something?" Yi Xian glanced at Lini and smiled, "Miss Lini, nice to meet you." Lini looked coldly at Yi Xian, "What's nice about it? I'm not familiar with you." Yi Xian chuckled, and then he looked at Mu Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao blinked, "What is it?" Yi Xian opened his palm and a flying knife appeared within it. Mu Xiaodao's eyes instantly lit up when he saw this flying dagger. A legendary divine artifact. Furthermore, it's perfect grade. Ma Yi glanced at the flying dagger, wanting to say something but hesitating. Such playthings were rare even in the Cosmos God Court. How did this guy get it? Yi Xian chuckled, "I risked my life for this." Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. "Use your life?" Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, "I almost died in order to obtain this flying dagger." "Really?" Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. "Why did you give it to me? I've been trying to kill you." Yi Xian was about to speak when Ma Yi suddenly said, "Don't even think about instigating Little Knife to defect. She won't be with you." Yi Xian laughed. "If I like it, I'll give it to you. There's no other reason." After speaking, he looked at the god official and the others and smiled. "To be honest, I, Yi Xian, came here today to destroy the Cosmos God Court." Destroy the Cosmos God Court. Everyone looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. The god official shook his head. "Your joke is not funny at all." Yi Xian pointed his sword at the god official. "God official, I heard that you are the number 2 of the Cosmos God Court. I challenge you." Challenge the god official. All the spectators shook their heads. God official. He had reached the peak of the mortal-breaking realm tens of thousands of years ago. It was even rumored that he had surpassed the mortal-breaking realm. As for Yi Xian, no matter how strong he was, how strong could he be? It could be said that he didn't even have the qualifications to challenge the god official. At this moment, a black-clothed man suddenly said, "You don't have the qualifications to challenge the god official. Let me play with you." Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and sheathed it. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. Chi. That black-clothed man's head flew off silently. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Instant kill. Seeing this scene, the expressions of all the experts from the Cosmos God Court changed. The god official looked at Yi Xian. Mortal-breaking realm. The moment Yi Xian attacked, everyone could see the depth of his strength. Even though he wanted to, he couldn't hide it. Mortal-breaking realm. If Yi Xian wasn't worth their attention before, it was different now. Mortal-breaking realm. Even in the Cosmos God Court, experts of this level were rare. Mu Xiaodao and the hemp-clothed women were extremely shocked. Especially Mu Xiaodao. She didn't expect that this guy had actually broken through. How did he break through? Mu Xiaodao was confused. Didn't this mean that she couldn't bully this guy in the future? Yi Xian smiled. God official, if you think that I'm not qualified to fight you one-on-one, that's fine too. As he said this, he pointed his sword at the Yin-Yang envoy. Let's fight one-on-one. Swordsman versus swordsman. Swordsman versus swordsman. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian with a weird expression. This guy was up to no good again. Because she knew that Yi Xian's body was very special. He was immune to swords. The god official knew this too. He looked at Yi Xian. Your body is special. At this moment, the young envoy with the sword said. I accept your challenge. The god official frowned. He turned to look at the young envoy. He shook his head and transmitted his voice. This person's body is special. He is immune to all swords and sword chi. You will be at a disadvantage if you fight him. The swordsman looked calm. Let's try. As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. Attack. Yi Xian didn't waste any time. He attacked. Life and death sword. He used his full strength in his first attack. In the distance, the swordsman also attacked the moment Yi Xian attacked. There was no sword chi, no sword light, and no sword intent. It was an ordinary sword attack. One attacked like a tiger pouncing on its prey. The other attacked like a quiet virgin. Their swordsmanship styles were completely different. However, neither of them chose to retreat. Instead, they chose to face each other head-on. Bang! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted in the field, and Yi Xian returned to his original position. The swordsman didn't move. Obviously, in this confrontation, Yi Xian was at a disadvantage. This was normal. After all, he had just reached the transcending mortality realm. The swordsman had reached the transcending mortality realm tens of thousands of years ago. After repelling Yi Xian with one sword strike, the sword cultivator suddenly disappeared from where he stood. Chi! The space in front of Yi Xian suddenly tore open. Yi Xian calmly blocked with his sword. Bang! The sword in Yi Xian's hand shook violently. He retreated hundreds of meters. Before he could stop, another sword attack came. Yi Xian's eyes suddenly shrank. A trace of panic appeared on his face. Just when everyone thought that Yi Xian was going to block, Yi Xian didn't block. He allowed the swordsman's sword to stab into his chest. Chi! Yi Xian was stabbed by the sword. However, the swordsman returned to his original position. At this moment, his right arm was gone. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the experts from the Cosmos God Court changed. This was because they realized that Yi Xian was really fine. He had directly absorbed the swordsman's sword. He could absorb swords. The expressions of the experts from the Cosmos God Court instantly turned weird. What kind of physique was this guy? Yi Xian took in a deep breath. That absorption just now was too. If this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Awesome. The stronger the swordsman's sword, the more awesome it would be to absorb it. Of course, it wouldn't be on the level of his father. Absorbing a sword of that level would be awesome. From afar, the swordsman looked at Yi Xian. What a unique physique. Yi Xian looked at the swordsman and smiled, again. The swordsman shook his head. I'm not your match. After saying that, he retreated to the side. At this moment, the lady with the blades suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and without any nonsense, she raised her hand and slashed. This slash was as fast as lightning. Before Yi Xian could see it clearly, a blade light had already slashed in front of him. Yi Xian reacted quickly. He raised his sword horizontally to block the attack. Boom! Yi Xian instantly retreated a few hundred meters away. Before he could stop, a blade slashed down from above his head. Yi Xian did not continue to dodge this slash. Instead, he stabbed out with his sword. He was going to perish together with the enemy. However, the underworld emissary did not choose to perish together with Yi Xian. She tilted her blade and swept it out. Boom! Yi Xian's sword was directly slashed apart. Following that, she took the opportunity to slash towards Yi Xian's face. 2 slashes were connected in one go. Yi Xian still did not choose to block. This lady's blade was too fierce. If he chose to defend, he would forever be in a passive position. However, he did not use any external objects. At the instant when the lady's blade slashed towards his head, he suddenly released his right hand. His sword suddenly flew out and stabbed towards the back of the lady's neck at an extremely strange angle. Heart sword and instant kill sword. The speed of this sword was not any slower than the lady's blade. Moreover, it was a method of perishing together. If the lady's blade slashed down, she would be able to hit Yi Xian. However, she would also be stabbed by Yi Xian's sword. The lady still did not choose to perish together with Yi Xian because she knew that Yi Xian's body was strong. Yi Xian might be able to withstand her blade, but she would definitely not be able to withstand Yi Xian's sword. The lady immediately withdrew her blade and blocked. Boom! Yi Xian's flying sword was directly blocked. However, in the next moment, the sword returned to Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian was about to attack when the lady took a big step forward and slashed with her blade with both hands. Sky Splitter. As the blade descended, the sky split. In the face of this terrifying blade, Yi Xian still did not choose to retreat. Instead, he slashed forward with his sword. This sword strike was like a mountain torrent, and the heavens and the earth could not bear it. Sword force. This was the force that he had comprehended when he faced the divine official. A sword strike, regardless of life or death. Bang! The space in front of Yi Xian and the lady suddenly exploded apart. Both of them retreated explosively while the space around them collapsed inch by inch. In the distance, Yan Xiao suddenly spoke softly, "Recover." As soon as her voice resounded, the space in the surroundings returned to normal. Meanwhile, countless rays of light from swords and blades suddenly appeared in the distance, and the space that had recovered shattered once more. A short while later, Yi Xian and the lady separated. After Yi Xian stopped, he opened his right hand, and a sword appeared in his grasp. The Heart Sword. In the distance, the lady held the blade in her right hand and pointed it diagonally downwards. She gazed coldly at Yi Xian while her eyes were filled with boundless battle intent. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when the divine official suddenly said, "That's enough." Yi Xian gazed at the divine official, and the divine official gazed at Yi Xian. The one-on-one round is over. Now, we're going to gang up on each other. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and then over a dozen afterimages suddenly charged at Yi Xian. Gang up on each other. Yi Xian's face sank. "All of you are really shameless. You're actually ganging up on each other." The divine official remained expressionless. "You can call for help as well." Yi Xian fell silent. "Who am I calling for help?" Right at this moment, a voice suddenly came from afar. "I heard that all of you want to gang up on each other." End of this chapter. Chapter 1607. As soon as the voice resounded, a woman walked over slowly from afar. Everyone looked at the woman. She wore battle armor and held a large saber in her hand. Yi Xian was slightly stunned when he saw her because he didn't know her. "Who is she?" The woman walked over to Yi Xian's side, sized Yi Xian up, and smiled. "You came alone?" Yi Xian nodded. The woman roared with laughter and gave him a thumbs up. As expected of a descendant of my Yang clan. You've got guts. Yi Xian blinked. Yang clan? The woman nodded. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a strand of bloodline energy appeared on her hand. Mad demon energy. Yi Xian was slightly shocked because he noticed that this woman possessed mad demon energy as well. However, it was slightly different from his. Yi Xian looked at the woman. You are? The woman blinked. You should call me ancestor. Ancestor. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman roared with laughter. Do you believe me now? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Are you here to help me fight? The woman waved the saber in her hand and smiled. What do you think? Yi Xian immediately bowed respectfully. Greetings, ancestor. Everyone was speechless. The woman was slightly stunned, but she suddenly roared with laughter in the next moment. Just as Miss Ding said, this little fellow is much easier to talk to than his father. It's entirely possible to make this little fellow acknowledge his ancestors and return to his clan. The woman was in a great mood when she thought up to here. She turned around to look at the divine official and the others, and a smile arose on the corners of her mouth. Little fellow, take good care of yourself. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly took a large step forward and slashed her saber at the divine official. The starry sky changed color as soon as the saber was swung. The divine official's expression also became solemn at this moment. He didn't dare to be careless, and his figure flashed backward, retreating several hundred meters away. However, the saber didn't strike empty air, and it still fell straight down from the top of his head. This saber pierced through space directly. It was impossible to dodge. The divine official suddenly clenched his right hand. Heaven and earth protect me. An illusory shield appeared above him. Boom! The saber fell and the illusory shield shattered. The god official retreated thousands of feet, and the space in front of him and the woman had already turned into nothingness. Under this saber, nothing could survive. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings had become solemn when they witnessed this scene. Forcing back a heavenly official with a single saber strike, one had to admit that his strength was terrifying. Yi Xian was also a little surprised. The strength of his cheap ancestor was a little terrifying. He had probably reached the peak of the breaking mortality stage. In the distance, the divine official coldly looked at the woman. He opened his palm and suddenly clenched it. An invisible force suddenly enveloped the woman, and the woman slashed forward. One saber to break all laws. The moment she brandished the saber, she rushed out. Like a hot knife through butter. The power in front of the god official was directly shattered. At the same time, the woman appeared in front of the god official and slashed down with her saber. The god official's eyes narrowed, and a cold light flashed in them. The moment the large blade descended, he punched out. Bang! The ray of light didn't shatter, but space itself was shattered into countless pieces. The god official retreated once more, and the woman pressed forward and slashed down with her saber once more. This strike was like a bolt of lightning, and the starry sky couldn't endure it. At the instant the saber descended, the starry sky and the surroundings started to crack apart layer by layer. However, the god official's expression was extremely calm. At the instant the saber descended, his body suddenly became illusory, and numerous afterimages charged towards the woman. Rumble. Numerous explosions resounded incessantly. The woman's saber grew dimmer and dimmer while the afterimages of the god official grew more and more numerous. Bang! Another explosion resounded. The ray of light shattered, and the woman retreated by 300 m. After that, the god official appeared before everyone again. The woman gazed at the god official while the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and then she suddenly said, "Little fellow, take care of yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, the blood within her entire body started to boil, and her eyes gradually turned scarlet red. The energy of her bloodline. Obviously, she wanted to do it for real. At the instant the energy of her bloodline was activated, her aura suddenly rose explosively. A trace of seriousness finally appeared in the god official's eyes when he witnessed this scene. He noticed that the woman had become extremely dangerous after the energy of her bloodline was activated. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly vanished on the spot, and then a ray of blood-red light flashed. Hiss! Space cracked apart. The god official suddenly said, "Kill that fellow, Yi Xian." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished as well. It didn't take long for deafening explosions to resound. The entire starry sky started to tremble. "Kill that fellow, Yi Xian." Everyone gazed at Yi Xian, and then the undying old man suddenly said, "I'll fight you." As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, the god official's voice resounded once more, "He definitely has a trump card since he dared to come to my bloodshed palace by himself. Don't fight him one-on-one. All of you attack him together. Attack him together." Yi Xian's expression instantly became unsightly when he heard this. The undying old man suddenly vanished on the spot, and Yi Xian suddenly stabbed with his sword. Bang! A figure retreated madly. It was none other than Yi Xian. Yi Xian retreated more than 10,000 feet away from the battle. The undying old man glanced at Yi Xian and spoke indifferently, "You've just stepped into the Transcendence realm. You're still an ant." As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, a voice suddenly resounded from behind Yi Xian, "Is that so?" Yi Xian was overjoyed when he heard this, and he swiftly turned around to see a woman standing behind him. 2. It was still the white-robed butcher. 2 glanced at the undying old man, and then she gazed at Yi Xian. The icy coldness in her eyes instantly transformed into tenderness. "You've attained the Transcendence realm?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." 2 grinned, "Let's talk later." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked towards the undying old man while her gaze gradually turned icy cold. "My brother is an ant? Then who do you think you are?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly transformed into a ray of light and vanished. The undying old man's expression changed slightly, and he swiftly smashed his fist forward. Bang! The ray of light didn't shatter, but the undying old man was pushed 3 kilometers back. The expressions of everyone here changed when they witnessed this scene. The emissary stared fixedly at 2 while disbelief filled her eyes, the quasi-mortal destroyer. The realm above the Transcendence realm was the Mortal Destroyer realm. But this woman wasn't close to the Mortal Destroyer realm, she was at the Quasi-Mortal Destroyer realm. Yi Xian was quite shocked as well. He hadn't expected that 2 had actually attained the Mortal Destroyer realm. Moreover, it seemed like she hadn't just attained the Mortal Destroyer realm. 2 had actually broken through as well. Of course, this was a good thing for him. The undying old man glanced at his right hand, and there was an extremely deep injury on it. The undying old man gazed at 2, and there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. A swordsman at the quasi-mortal destroyer realm. Suddenly, 2 pointed at the undying old man, slash. As soon as she finished speaking, countless strands of sword energy suddenly appeared in the space around the undying old man, and they slashed down in succession. A wisp of viciousness flashed through the undying old man's eyes. He took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. Actually, it wasn't a single punch, it was countless punches. In practically an instant, the sky above the undying old man was covered in countless punches. However, those punches couldn't resist the sword energy at all, and they were ceaselessly slashed into pieces. Moreover, the undying old man was pushed back repeatedly by the sword energy. Moreover, not only did the sword energy not reduce, it was increasing in number. The experts of the Cosmos Divine Court frowned when they witnessed this scene. This swordsman is extraordinarily strong. Suddenly, Tu transformed into a ray of light and vanished. The undying old man's pupils constricted, and then he suddenly swept his arms horizontally before him. Bang! An expanse of light suddenly erupted, and then the undying old man was pushed 30 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped moving, blood sprayed from all over his body. He was covered in scars. On the other hand, after Tu stopped moving, she pressed her fingers together and countless strands of sword energy suddenly returned to her surroundings. The undying old man stared fixedly at Tuesday. He opened his right hand, and a strand of black energy suddenly surged out from his palm. It didn't take long for the black energy to envelop his entire body, causing his figure to be concealed. No one knew what it was. Not even the experts of the Cosmos Divine Court. Right at this moment, the undying old man suddenly vanished on the spot. In an instant, countless strands of black energy surged towards Tuesday. Tu's face was emotionless, and she suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot forward explosively. Hiss! The black energy in the distance was instantly torn apart, but it healed in the next moment. Tu was instantly drowned. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly when he witnessed this scene, and he was just about to act when a strand of divine sense suddenly enveloped him. Yi Xian turned around and saw that it was the woman who held a saber that he'd fought earlier. At this moment, she was staring fixedly at him. Yi Xian suddenly vanished. This sword strike was extremely swift, and it should be said to be abnormal. Because Yi Xian had utilized one of the divine artifacts, the spacetime shoes. The woman's expression changed drastically at the instant Yi Xian vanished. She didn't even have the time to react before a sword pierced through the center of her forehead. Hiss! Blood sprayed. At this moment, the expressions of all the experts here had changed. He was instantly killed with a single strike. All of them were slightly stunned. After all, she was a divine envoy. She was an expert at the transcendence realm as well. However, she'd actually been instantly killed by a single strike from Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yan Xiaoxiao suddenly glanced at the shoes on Yi Xian's feet. A perfect legendary rank divine artifact. A perfect legendary rank divine artifact. Everyone gazed at Yi Xian's shoes when they heard Yan Xiaoxiao, and their eyes were filled with fear. If it was just the transcendence realm, then it wouldn't be terrifying. If it was just a perfect legendary rank divine artifact, then it wouldn't be terrifying either. But if both of them were combined, then it was extraordinarily terrifying. That divine artifact was sufficient to make Yi Xian invincible among those in the same realm of cultivation. So, what cultivation realm was Yi Xian at now? It was the transcendence realm. If he was invincible among those in the same realm of cultivation, then what was there left to do? After Yi Xian killed the woman with a single strike, he turned to look at the sword-wielding man. The sword-wielding man stared at Yi Xian with fear in his eyes. He couldn't fight Yi Xian at all. Not to mention the pair of shoes, just Yi Xian's special physique was enough to make him despair. Yi Xian glanced at everyone and shook his head. Throughout the entire divine court, there's no one who can fight me. As he spoke, he looked at the sword in his hand and shook his head again. He sighed softly. Being invincible is so painful. It's so King painful. Everyone was speechless. P.S. I was almost tricked by that reader into not updating anymore. I suddenly feel that he might be trying to harm me. Chapter 1608. Invincible. The faces of the experts of the Cosmos God Court turned extremely unsightly. Is this guy really shameless? Invincible? This guy has the nerve to say that. Not far away, Ma Yi was about to attack but was stopped by Xiaodao. Mu Xiaodao shook his head. You and I are no longer his match unless we use the power of law. As she said this, she felt extremely complicated. Not long ago, this Yi Xian was still not her match. But now, this Yi Xian's strength had far surpassed her. Even without those godly items, Yi Xian's strength was still above hers. Now, Yi Xian was in the breaking mortality realm. Breaking mortality. Mu Xiaodao was extremely shocked. How did this guy reach the breaking mortality realm? Could it be that shameless people could easily break through? At the side, Ma Yi stared at Yi Xian. He's too arrogant. Mu Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian and said softly, he has the ability to be arrogant now. The current Yi Xian was in the breaking mortality realm. Coupled with the pair of boots on his feet, he was almost invincible among those in the same realm. Especially that pair of boots, it was like cheating. At this moment, a sword hum resounded from afar. Yi Xian turned around and saw a figure retreating rapidly. It was the undying old man who was fighting with two. At this moment, the undying old man was only left with his left arm. His entire body was covered in sword wounds as if he had been dismembered. Around two, sword energy crisscrossed and flew. She was completely unharmed. The undying old man lost. At the scene, countless Cosmos God Court experts had grave expressions. The undying old man actually lost to this swordsman. Mu Xiaodao glanced at Tu and felt a little surprised. How did this woman become so strong? Did this family use cheats to cultivate? From afar, Tu stared coldly at the undying old man, gaudy. As soon as she finished speaking, the sword chi around her suddenly flew out. At the same time, she herself transformed into a ray of sword light and flew out. The undying old man's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene. Right at this moment, Slaughter's sword chi suddenly slowed down. At the same time, countless strange talismans suddenly appeared in front of the undying old man, and they actually formed an enormous talisman shield. The sword arrived. Boom! The runic shield violently trembled and then became illusory. However, it had withstood Tu's sword chi and his extremely powerful attack. Tu turned to look at Yan Xiaoxiao on his right. The one who attacked was Yan Xiaoxiao, the strongest expert of the Cosmos God Court, Teacher Yan. If Yan Xiaoxiao didn't make a move, the undying old man would have been killed. The swordsman's slashing ability could be said to be the strongest among all martial artists. Tu looked at Yan Xiaoxiao and raised his sword. A ray of sword light flew out. However, the ray of sword light was blocked by a runic shield when it arrived in front of Yan Xiaoxiao. Tu walked towards Yan Xiaoxiao with his sword in hand. Yan Xiaoxiao gazed at him with a calm expression. Right at this moment, the divine official's voice resounded once more, "Kill that fellow, Yi Xian, first. Kill Yi Xian first." Yi Xian flared up with rage when he heard this. "You're killing me at the drop of a hat? Did I dig up your ancestral grave?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly transformed into a ray of light and vanished. At this moment, many people here couldn't sense Yi Xian at all because he'd utilized the spatial shuttle. Because his speed was truly too swift. On the other hand, the expression of the divine official who was in battle with Yang Busi instantly changed drastically. He swiftly turned around and punched Yang Busi, and there was a strange law character on his fist. Bang! The ray of light shattered while Yi Xian was blasted 30 kilometers away. Yi Xian was slightly dazed after he stopped moving. What was that force? At this moment, his body had actually split apart, and his internal organs even felt like they'd exploded apart. It was extremely uncomfortable. His powerful physical body actually crumbled in the face of this punch. Of course, he still hadn't used the war god's armor. He wanted to use it at the critical moment. Meanwhile, Mu Xiaodao's voice resounded in his mind, a law incantation. The formidable energy of the laws contained within it isn't something you can resist. Yi Xian glanced at Mu Xiaodao. yet Mu Xiaodao was looking elsewhere as if he hadn't spoken those words just now. A law incantation. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze and looked at his cracked body. Looks like I have to ask my father to leave some sort of law incantation for me when I have the time. Meanwhile, his body had returned to normal. He gazed at Tu, and Tu had suddenly vanished. Yan Xiaoxiao's brows knit together slightly, and then her red lips parted. It was unknown what she said, but the space around her suddenly split apart layer by layer. The space that split apart was like a mirror, and there were countless Yan Xiaoxiao and Tu within it. It was extremely strange. Yi Xian's expression became solemn when he saw this. This Yan Xiaoxiao does have some ability. Meanwhile, Mu Xiaodao's voice resounded in his mind again, this is the all-creation space, an extremely powerful technique. That swordsman is trapped within it, and he won't be able to come out in a short period of time. Hurry up and think of a way to save your life. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he spoke via voice transmission as well, who's the most terrifying person in the divine court? Mu Xiaodao replied, a little girl killer. Yi Xian frowned slightly, a little girl killer? Mu Xiaodao said, this person's assassination ability is peerless. Be careful. An assassin. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings, and then he asked, is he here? Mu Xiaodao replied, he went to look for you earlier. I don't know now. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, how terrifying is he? Mu Xiaodao replied in a low voice, he can instantly annihilate mortal realm experts. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he heard this. Damn it. What the hell? Instantly annihilate mortal realm experts? Yi Xian suddenly felt a chill run down his spine, and he hurriedly said in his heart, Xiao Ta, you have to tell me if there's any danger, understand? He knew that even though Xiao Ta was a slacker, this fellow's warning ability was very good. Xiao Ta chuckled, don't worry. With me here, I'll be the first to know if any expert that poses a lethal threat to you appears within 100 meters of you. Yi Xian frowned slightly, 100 meters? What's that? Xiao Ta said, according to the Milky Way, a distance of 100 meters. Actually, I don't know either. Yi Xian's face darkened. You don't know? You're telling me that you'll be able to warn me if someone appears within 100 meters. Are you kidding me? He felt that not only was this Xiao Ta a slacker, but he might also be a scammer. At this moment, more than 10 black shadows suddenly floated out from the space around Yi Xian. In the next moment, more than 10 cold lights slashed towards him. These were the experts of the Cosmos God Court in the dark. It was obvious that they had received the order from the God official to kill him. Yi Xian smiled coldly. With a thought, the spacetime shuttle boots activated, and his entire body disappeared from the spot. However, in the next moment, he returned to his original position. Around him, more than 10 bloody heads and more than 10 corpses appeared. Instant kill. With his current speed and strength, not to mention these ordinary experts, even mortal realm experts wouldn't be able to pose a threat to him, unless they had reached the level of Tu and the God official. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the strange space in the distance. Just as he was about to help Tu break that strange space, the space in front of him suddenly distorted, and a long spear pierced through the air. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He raised his hand and slashed down with his sword, and sword light shot out. Bang! The distorted space directly shattered, and Yi Xian retreated several hundred meters. As soon as he stopped, a white-robed man appeared in front of him, and the man smashed his spear towards him. However, at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind the white-robed man. Just as he was about to attack, a strange force enveloped him, and his speed instantly slowed down. At this moment, the white-robed man pulled back his spear, and this spear directly pierced the tip of Yi Xian's sword. Bang! Yi Xian was forced back again. After stopping, Yi Xian didn't attack again. He looked at the white-robed man with a trace of astonishment in his eyes. The mysterious force that suppressed him was a domain. Spear domain. The white-robed man stood with a spear in one hand. He just looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression, and there wasn't a single ripple in his eyes. Just as Yi Xian was about to attack, another man appeared behind him. This man had shoulder-length hair, and he held a folding fan in his right hand. His clothes were somewhat gaudy, and at first glance, one would think that he was a woman. Both of them were in the mortal-breaking realm. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Damn, why were there so many mortal-breaking realm cultivators in the Cosmos Divine Court? At this moment, Mu Xiaodao's voice sounded again, "Be careful of the seventh swordsman. He might use the power of the universal law to attack you. That power of the universal law is more than 10 times more terrifying than that of a mortal-breaking realm cultivator." Yi Xian turned his head to look at the seventh swordsman. As expected, the seventh swordsman had already appeared on his right. He had been staring at him, and it was obvious that he wanted to attack him. However, there was still someone else. Not far above his head, the space trembled slightly, and then a man walked out. The man held a long halberd in his right hand. Another mortal-breaking realm cultivator. Yi Xian was silent. He knew that he had underestimated the Cosmos Divine Court. In fact, not only Yi Xian, but Mu Xiaodao and the two women in Lini were also a little shocked. This was because they did not know the three mortal-breaking realm cultivators who had just appeared. At this moment, Lini said in a low voice, "They must have returned from the Void Zone." Mu Xiaodao nodded slightly, "They must have. However, even I can't see through the Cosmos Divine Court." Lini also nodded. Strictly speaking, she and Mu Xiaodao were not considered members of the Cosmos Divine Court because they were only responsible for the universal law. Therefore, they did not fully understand the true strength of the Cosmos Divine Court. Mu Xiaodao looked at the distant Yi Xian, and no one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, Lini suddenly pulled her hand. "Xiaodao, don't do anything stupid. Otherwise, you will be doomed eternally." Mu Xiaodao did not speak. Lini's eyes were filled with worry. As if she had thought of something, she turned her head and looked coldly at Yi Xian. It was all because of this B***tch. All men were bad. At this moment, the white-robed man holding the spear in the distance suddenly disappeared. The next moment, a cold light suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The moment the white-robed man made his move, the other two also made their moves. 3 types of domains directly enveloped Yi Xian. Obviously, this was the spacetime shuttle boots that were used to suppress Yi Xian. This was normal. After all, Yi Xian's boots were too abnormal. Without the suppression of the domains, even the 3 of them would not be able to resist that speed. When he was suppressed by the 3 domains, a trace of panic suddenly appeared on Yi Xian's face. This trace of panic was coincidentally caught by the 3 of them, and they became even more confident. Just as they rushed to Yi Xian's side, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. The next moment, 10 Yi Xian suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. Doppelgangers. The moment the 10 doppelgangers appeared, the 3 people's expressions changed drastically. They wanted to retreat, but it was too late. 2 of the doppelgangers blocked the man with the spear and the man with the halberd. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's main body and the other 8 doppelgangers drew their swords at the same time and slashed at the man holding the fan behind them. Seeing the 9 swords slashing at him, the man's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment, he could not retreat at all. He could only take it head-on. He suddenly fanned his fan, and a white light burst out. However, in the next moment, this white light was directly slashed into pieces. Then, 9 rays of sword light pierced through his body. The man was instantly dismembered into countless pieces. Seeing this, the white-robed man and the other two immediately retreated, distancing themselves from Yi Xian. Looking at the 11 Yi Xians in the distance, the two of them had extremely serious expressions. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. The 10 doppelgangers were right beside him. At that moment, he felt that even those at the mortal breaking stage were ants. Yi Xian seemed to have noticed something. He suddenly turned his head and looked at the hall on the right. There was a huge statue of a man. The man looked forward with a gentle expression. Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the statue. Looking at the statue, he suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. It was somewhat absurd. That was because he was certain that he had never seen that man before. His gaze moved down. Below the statue, there were only 2 words, God Yi. God Yi? Yi Xian blinked. The next moment, he flew into a rage. You're calling me God Yi? I'm the real God Yi. As soon as he said that, he suddenly slashed down with his sword. Chi! The statue was directly slashed into pieces. Seeing that scene, Mu Xiaodao's face instantly turned pale. This idiot, why are you slashing this statue? Ma Yi looked coldly at Yi Xian. He's finished. At that moment, Yi Xian realized that something was amiss. That was because many experts of the Cosmos God Court were looking at him. And those experts were looking at him with pity in their eyes. At that moment, the temperature suddenly dropped. In the distance, Tu, who was fighting with Yan Xiaoxiao, seemed to feel something. He immediately turned his head and roared, "Run!" Yang Bu Si also suddenly turned his head, "Little guy, quickly run." Mu Xiaodao's voice also rang out. "Bitch, call your father out. Hurry up." Yi Xian was a little confused. He was about to run. At that moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, don't panic. There's no danger. If there is, I'll know. Calm down, I'm here." Before he finished speaking, a dagger suddenly drilled out from Yi Xian's chest. Chi! A stream of blood splattered, Yi Xian's entire body froze on the spot. There was only one thought in his mind. "Xiao Ta, I'll be a fool to believe you. You big scammer, FPZW." Chapter 1609. Needless to say, Yi Xian was stunned. He didn't expect that he, who had broken through to the transcendent realm, wouldn't be able to fight back at all. He didn't even have the chance to take out his war god's armor. Who was it? At this moment, a little girl appeared in front of him. One side of her face was covered by her hair and only the left side of her face could be seen. At this moment, the little girl was staring at him. And the little girl's dagger was still in his chest. He wasn't dead, but he couldn't move. Because he knew that if he moved, he would die without a doubt. That dagger had directly locked the life force in his body. Right now, he was finished. The only reason he wasn't dead was because the little girl didn't want to kill him. The little girl threw Yi Xian a cold look. Then she turned around to look at the broken statue on the ground. As she looked at it, her face gradually turned hideous. All of a sudden, she roared in anger. Ah! Boom! This roar caused the entire starry sky to collapse. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn, this woman has definitely surpassed the transcendent realm. The scariest thing was that this woman was an assassin. Who could withstand this? At this moment, Mu Xiaodao's voice sounded in his mind. Back then, there was an internal conflict in the Cosmos God Court. The reason was that the Cosmos God Court wanted to remove this statue. Then, she killed hundreds of thousands of experts from the Cosmos God Court. She even almost killed the Cosmos God Court's court lord at that time. If the laws of the cosmos hadn't stopped her, she might have killed everyone in the Cosmos God Court. Yi Xian's expression turned ugly. Damn! The Cosmos God Court wanted to remove this statue, but they were almost killed by this little girl. Now, he had destroyed this statue. He didn't know if an apology could resolve this peacefully. At this moment, the little girl turned to look at Yi Xian. She stared at Yi Xian. The killing intent in her eyes was the most terrifying killing intent that Yi Xian had ever seen in his life. Just this gaze alone was enough to make countless people tremble in fear. This little girl had definitely killed a lot of people. Just as the little girl was about to attack, a woman suddenly stood in front of Yi Xian. Wu Ku. Seeing Wu Ku suddenly stand in front of Yi Xian, the experts of the Cosmos God Court were stunned. What was going on? Wu Ku was a war king. Why was she helping Yi Xian? Yi Xian was confused when he saw Wu Ku. Why was this woman here? Moreover, looking at the surrounding Cosmos God Court experts, they seemed to recognize her. Could she be from the Cosmos God Court? The little girl looked at Wu Ku. Wu Ku slapped Yi Xian's shoulder, and a powerful force surged into Yi Xian's body. The little girl's dagger was directly forced out, but Yi Xian's vitality was disappearing at an extremely fast speed. The speed at which it disappeared was something that even the immortal bloodline couldn't recover. Luckily, he had Xiao Ta's purple gas. The purple gas, the immortal bloodline, and the self-healing ability of the war god armor saved his life. After his life was saved, Yi Xian immediately activated the war god armor. At this moment, he really felt that he was in danger, so he decisively activated the war god armor. After the war god armor was activated, Yi Xian's confidence skyrocketed. At this moment, he felt that he could kill gods and exterminate immortals. Yi Xian looked at the little girl and was about to attack. At this moment, Wu Ku suddenly said, "Go." Go? Yi Xian blinked. I can. Wu Ku looked at Yi Xian. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Go. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, the little girl suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. In the next moment, a dagger suddenly stabbed out of his chest. Yi Xian was stunned. Where was the war god armor? The invincible war god armor? Yi Xian's mind was in a mess. He didn't expect that his war god armor would be useless. At this moment, Yi Xian's mind was buzzing. As soon as the little girl attacked, Wu Ku disappeared as well. Boom! An explosion suddenly resounded, and in the next moment, the little girl returned to her original position. Wu Ku returned to his original position as well, but at this moment, there was an extremely deep knife wound on her abdomen. The little girl looked at Wu Ku, and the dagger that was originally stuck in Yi Xian's chest appeared in her hand again. Wu Ku stared at the little girl. Go! The dagger in her hand was personally forged by you when you were the master of the universe. It can even easily tear the laws of the universe apart. It's not something that the armor you're wearing can compare to. Actually, Yi Xian wasn't dead yet because the recovery ability of the immortal bloodline, the violet aura, and the war god armor were too abnormal. Of course, it was also because Wu Ku stopped the little girl. Otherwise, he would be dead. At this moment, Tu's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Retreat first. This person isn't someone you can defeat. Yi Xian didn't think too much. He immediately activated the spacetime shuttle boots and disappeared on the spot. The little girl glanced at the spot where Yi Xian disappeared and suddenly swung her knife. Hundreds of thousands of miles away, Yi Xian, who had just walked out of a certain space, had a drastic change in his expression. He turned around and slashed with his sword. Boom! The sword light shattered instantly, and Yi Xian retreated hundreds of thousands of feet away. When he stopped, the position where his war god armor's throat was already cracked. Not only was the war god armor cracked, but even his throat was torn apart. Yi Xian disappeared on the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already hundreds of thousands of miles away. After stopping, Yi Xian's expression became extremely grave. That little girl was too terrifying. She was definitely an expert at the mortal destruction realm, or even higher. Damn it! Why are my enemies always so much stronger than me? And this war god armor, damn it, could it be a fake? As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Xiao Ta, where's your warning? Xiao Ta fell silent for a short moment before he said, Young master, I can't sense her. She attacked too quickly. By the time I felt her, her dagger had already pierced into your chest. I'm very helpless as well. Yi Xian's face darkened. I'm even more helpless. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian turned around and looked over. Would Tu and that ancestor be in danger? Suddenly, Mu Xiaodao's voice resounded in his mind. Leave quickly. She's gone to look for you. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he heard this, and he hurriedly activated the space-time shuttle boots. In the next moment, he vanished on the spot. However, a strand of blood sprayed onto the ground at the instant he vanished. It was naturally Yi Xian's blood. Meanwhile, a little girl appeared here. It was that nameless little girl. As soon as the little girl appeared here, Wuku appeared here as well. But in the next moment, the little girl suddenly vanished once more. Wuku's expression instantly became unsightly when she witnessed this scene, and she swiftly turned around to look over. In the next moment, she'd vanished on the spot. She could only follow Yi Xian because she knew that the little girl would pursue Yi Xian until she killed Yi Xian. On the other side, Yi Xian had just appeared in an expanse of the starry sky, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This chapter isn't finished. Please keep going. A wisp of blood seeped out from his wound, and there was an extremely deep injury on his stomach. As soon as he appeared in this expanse of the starry sky, Yi Xian activated the space-time shuttle boots once more. In the next moment, he vanished once more. At the instant that he vanished, the space where he stood was suddenly torn apart, and another strand of blood sprayed on the spot. Wuku had appeared here again, but the little girl wasn't here. Wuku's expression instantly turned gloomy, and she vanished once more. At a certain spatial passageway. Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed drastically as he swiftly turned around, and he saw a little girl walking over slowly from the end of the passageway. She's here again. Yi Xian immediately left the spatial passageway, and he swiftly turned around and swung his sword when he appeared in an expanse of the starry sky. At this moment, he'd immediately utilized the dark mirror of heaven and earth. 10 clones and his true body. 11 rays of light slashed down in a straight line, and the space in front of him was instantly torn apart. However, it only took a moment for those 12 rays of light to shatter into pieces. At the same time, a dagger suddenly stabbed his chest. Fortunately, his true body had vanished. He'd activated the space-time shuttle boots at the instant that he attacked. However, it was still too late. His chest had still been struck by a stab. The combat god's armor wasn't completely useless. At the very least, it could slow down the little girl's dagger for a moment, and it could save his life. Because if it wasn't for the combat god's armor, then the little girl's dagger would have instantly destroyed the vitality within his body. Actually, Yi Xian was extremely aggrieved at this moment. It was the combat god's armor. The Earth Spirit clan's ultimate treasure. However, it was as weak as a piece of paper before this woman. This was too tragic. He even wondered if the Earth Spirit clan had really given him a fake. Actually, the combat god's armor was even more tragic. At this moment, the spirit of the combat god's armor was extremely aggrieved as well. It had just come out, yet it had suffered a vicious beating. How tragic. What kind of immortals and demons did my master encounter? Under normal circumstances, even an expert who'd surpassed the mortal breaking stage couldn't break through its defenses with such ease. However, that woman was clearly abnormal. In the starry sky, Yi Xian surveyed his surroundings. He took out the universal apparatus and was about to perform long-distance teleportation. However, at this moment, the space behind him suddenly split open. At the moment of the split, a cold light had already appeared above his head. Yi Xian's expression changed, and he immediately activated the space-time boots. However, when he appeared in another part of the starry sky, his expression froze. This was because he realized that the little girl was right in front of him. She was faster than him. Yi Xian immediately activated the space-time boots again. When he appeared in an unknown part of the starry sky, the little girl was still in front of him. It was as if the two of them hadn't moved at all. The little girl just stared at Yi Xian. This time, Yi Xian didn't activate the magical shuttle boots. Instead, he activated the invisible armor. After activating the invisible armor, he directly entered an unknown world. At this moment, he could see the little girl. After Yi Xian disappeared, the little girl didn't leave. She looked around as if she was looking for Yi Xian, but it seemed that she couldn't find him. Seeing this, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the unknown world he'd entered was very special. Even the little girl couldn't find him. However, at this moment, a face suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was the little girl. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.